Talk about the sports we saw. Inside jokes and takes from Danger and Battaglia. Bills and the Sabres and the Amherst. Who gave a microphone to these jerks? Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. With Danger and Battaglia.
Yes. It's Friday. We've got a great sports weekend ahead of us. Let's get there. Welcome on into the sports bar. Danger and Battaglia. Glad you're with us at 95.7 FM, AM 950, the Fan Rochester, and the free-to-download Odyssey app, and even on our YouTube channel and our Twitch stream at the Fan Rochester. I'm Danger. That's Battaglia.
73 degrees in downtown Rochester
Feels
today.
good. Feels good,
go.
man. I don't want to say that our entire city and our mood is dictated by the weather, but who doesn't feel great when you have a Friday like this and a weekend? I know the weekend isn't going to be great, but you've got today. Enjoy today. This weekend is going to be just fine.
I'm floored because I'm underdressed today in the sports bar. Usually I'm the one.
All
like
right.
I work from home.
I know.
I'm in shorts.
I know.
You're not in
I worked
shorts.
from home this morning as well. I met up with some friends at lunch. And I would have just normally rolled up like I normally roll up on a Friday, like you, with a ball cap, some shorts, a T-shirt. But I'm like, all right, well, I'm going out for lunch, so let me throw on some decent pants and look somewhat presentable. And again, on a day like today, I don't really care. Put me in whatever you want to put me in because we got a beautiful afternoon, and we got a lot to get to here in the sports bar. We're glad you're with us, and we're going to talk a little bit about a move made by the Buffalo Sabres. We'll talk some Knicks. Game 6. We got a Game 6 to look forward to tomorrow afternoon. And we'll check in with our buddy Chris Mack from the BetMGM Network. He's our favorite Yinzer. We'll see what the latest is there now that OTAs for the Steelers have wrapped up with no sign of Aaron Rodgers. What exactly has been going on this offseason in the Steel City? Chris Mack joins us at 4:25.
Yeah, we also, I think, if you're a Pittsburgh sports fan, chances are you like the Penguins and the Pirates, and the Penguins don't have a coach. The Pirates have the most exciting pitcher in Major League Baseball with no hopes of signing him long-term. So how does that look? I mean, how do you even consider yourself Major League if you can't retain your own talent? Love talking with Chris Mack. That's coming up in the 4 o'clock hour.
Now, I mentioned the Sabres made a move today in their front office, and we'll get the reaction from Joe Yurden at Bleacher Report, noted hockey, one of our favorites to talk some Buffalo Sabres here.
I'm always curious when news like this breaks, and if it's on a Friday. Did they want to
Right.
Well,
I get why they do it on a Friday. It makes sense why they would announce this on a Friday.
Or do you feel like you're up against the clock in terms of, hey, we want to get an assistant coach, or we want to get to work on the draft, or whatever it is? We need to start this like right now. So the senior advisor, and it's funny, Joe Yurden will be joining us shortly. I texted Joe. I want to make sure I get this right. Just my snarkiness. Hey, great that you're coming on today. Fortuitous timing with the hiring of Kevin Adams' babysitter. This was me. Next in line, you mean? Ha ha.
Yeah, right. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about Jarmo Kekalainen.
Thanks to Dan DeLorean because he once was with the Sens. And
yeah, of course.
And
this guy's got a pretty decent resume. We'll explain, and we'll discuss it a little bit further here. Joe Yurden stopping by the sports bar in about 20 minutes. You can stop by the sports bar anytime. Our lines are open. Pull up a stool. The Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line is 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub, 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester. GoodSmokeBBQ.com.
Yeah, you got the Yankees-Dodgers this weekend.
Fantastic.
That is fantastic. 10-10 tonight. Not a big fan of that, but I get it. You can't really start a 4 p.m. Friday afternoon Pacific game. That's 7 o'clock their time. But move aside, because everybody in New York, there's only one team that unites the New York sports fan.
So
because
true.
in baseball, no. Football, football's down the list there.
Hey, can I go a little bit deeper on where you're going with this? Because I know you're going to say that the Knicks are the team that unites all of New York City. But I'm curious, because I know that there are a lot of New York fans, and maybe not so many here in Rochester, but I imagine if you're in New York and you have your allegiances, the Knicks are the our New York's team, because the Nets are a joke. Nobody pays attention to the Nets, right? The Islanders are Long Island's team. So the Rangers, I could say, maybe are like behind the Knicks. Like, you're just a Rangers fan if you're not an Islanders, if you're not on the island. But if you're like a Yankees fan and a Giants fan, or a Jets fan,
that's where
and
I was
a
going.
Mets
Yeah,
fan,
you're not right. You're sitting together, all in unison.
That's
You
right.
And if you say, well, what about Brooklyn? No. That's the New Jersey Nets. That's the team that played out in the old arena for so many years, and they got sold. And I'm sure there's people in Brooklyn that would say, oh, this is our team. They made it to the conference finals against Milwaukee a few years ago. Barely remember them making it with the three of them. So, no, it's definitely the Knicks. It's definitely a franchise that is way overdue. 1973, and this is going to end short, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe not. If they can figure out a way, Game 6 in Indiana. The thing is, Danger, Indiana's going to shoot better. I mean, that was one game last night. Okay, not everything went in. That was the first game this postseason where Indiana didn't get the triple digits. So, but I'm not going to rule the Knicks out in an elimination game. So that's tomorrow night at 8 o'clock.
I mean, how about holding Halliburton to under 10 points? Like, the defense stood up when you needed it to. 19 turnovers. And the win last night at the Garden, breaking Indiana's 6-game road streak. So between Jalen Brunson with 32 and 24 from Cat, stifling defense, the Knicks, I mean, that was kind of decisive, right? Never really trailed. And they get the big win in Game 5 to force Game 6 back in Indiana.
No, and with that, you thought this run might come. At least I'm watching this third quarter, fourth quarter. Okay, we'll just kind of move on to tomorrow night. Game 7, by the way, would be Monday night. And you better believe the NBA. They're not going to tell you this.
Oh, they want a Game 7.
Oh, ABC, ESPN. It's good. It'll be on TNT for Game 7, but I'm looking ahead to the finals there.
Right. The Knicks are all that matters in the NBA right now. If the Knicks are eliminated, I think most casual NBA fans, and I'll include myself, will be done. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll pay attention, but I'm not. It's not appointment TV for me to watch OKC Indiana in the finals.
No, just take it from our show. Will people want to kind of weigh in on Pacers and Thunder? I don't think so.
Yeah. Let's see if they can D up again in Indiana, where Bridges last night. Yeah, Halliburton with just 8 points. I mean, good defense. You're right. The Pacers aren't going to shoot that poorly, but good defense leading to those poor shots, and the Knicks get over in fairly decisive fashion. Game 5 at the Garden.
40% from the floor. That was the worst performance from the floor this season for Indiana.
Let's talk a little bit about what the Buffalo Sabres have done today, Gino. And I'll say that they did this on a Friday because it's a Friday and maybe less people are paying attention. If you're Kevin Adams, I'll say this. Terry Pagula must be one hell of a salesman to convince Kevin Adams to hire a guy who potentially could replace him at some point this upcoming season.
When Kevin Adams got hired, it's weird to think that happened like in the pandemic. It's been that long, right? We joked that the Y in Kevin stood for yes man.
He's a yes man.
Because, Jason Bottrill stood on principle. Jason Bottrill got the code to say, hey, you need to pare down your staff. No more scouting, no more this. No, I'm not. Okay, well, then you're gone, basically. And Kevin Adams, who was working on the business side, certainly as a player knew a thing about the league, but never, ever had as much as an internship in terms of, hey, player personnel and agents and everything. So there was a learning curve with Kevin Adams. Very smart guy, but you look at what's happened here in the last 5 years, it's hard to kind of defend what he's done. But if Terry Pagula trusts him and likes him, I would imagine that maybe there'll be a spot here long-term for Kevin Adams.
What was the thing that we heard about why Kevin Adams was hired, that Terry Pagula wanted to be heard, that maybe the previous regime knew what they needed to do, wanted to do it the way they wanted to do it, and Pagula didn't really have a voice in the room, where Kevin Adams gives him that. He gives him a voice. With Kevin Adams, Terry Pagula is heard. I just can't. This feels awkward to me, and I think that's partially why it's being announced on a Friday. Why not just get rid of the guy? I mean, the guy that you're bringing in as a senior advisor could certainly be the general manager of this team, given his resume and the success that he's had. But they're going to hold on to Adams. Kirkalainen is going to be a senior advisor, but let's face it. I mean, if things go poorly to start the season, if you have a slide at some point in the season, the way the Sabres did last year, if you're Terry Pegula, yeah, you want to be heard, but also, come on, enough is enough. You can slide Adams if you want to, spare him the embarrassment of being fired as the general manager. Find a role for him, but hand over the keys to a guy who's had success in that role.
Well, when they originally presented this, and the title here for Kekalainen is senior advisor, right? We just thought, and who wouldn't want to be an advisor, right? That just like, doesn't that seem like, hey, I want to pull down a paycheck. I don't want the heavy lift.
Yeah, just run things by me.
Yeah, run things by me, and I'm going to give you my opinion. Doesn't seem like there's too many of those jobs in the world, and I really don't know if that's what this is, because when you hear senior advisor, automatically, I guess we're conditioned, our worst fears were like, oh my gosh, Lou Lamoriello, he's 82. He can't walk away from the game like this. He might be the guy. And, supposedly he was walking in the Buffalo airport. Who knows if that was him or not. Regardless, Kekalainen is a guy that actually could be a GM. He's not that, I'm going to be from the ivory tower and I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to go on here. I would think that he's going to have more of a voice. And I'm just wondering, did Kevyn Adams kind of know this was coming if he brings in his BFF in Stahl? Eric Stahl coming in as kind of a trainee, if you will. I would think maybe Stahl had to know, right? There might be a change at the top here. He's coming.
Or are you trying to accumulate voices in the room? Stahl would be a voice to side maybe with Adams if somebody like Kekalainen were to come in and question as a senior advisor some of the moves that have been made. And Kekalainen, look, it wasn't all rosy during his time as Columbus GM. 5 playoff appearances, though, in his first 7 seasons. He had a 108-point team in the 2016-2017 season in Columbus. But he was also responsible for the drafting of Marian Hossa in Ottawa, Spezza, TJ Oshie, and Pietrangelo in St. Louis. So he's attached his time with these teams to some significant players, some significant moves. And I just think to myself, why do this on a Friday? Well, you do it on a Friday because if you're Kevyn Adams, I don't think you want it to be made a big deal of that. You basically just hired a guy who's got a better resume than you and could replace you at any point if the team so decides to go in that direction.
So I'm just wondering, when Joe Yerdon comes on, will there be another shoe to drop? Like, we're going to move him over to some sort of president of business operations or some other title, put Kevyn Adams on this side, because let's be honest, they need help there too, Danger, okay? They really do. Season tickets and worries about the border, team sucking. There's a lot of reasons why you might be worried about the Sabres. Oh, yeah, by the way, there's this whole arena issue with the county going, no, not ours. City saying, no, we can't afford this. So maybe Kevyn Adams heads that up. I don't know. But when we're saying, hey, this is Terry Pegula, mind you, there's another filter in there that has come along since Kevyn Adams was hired. His name's Pete Guelli.
Yeah.
And Pete Guelli did not hire Kevyn Adams.
Correct.
So Pete Guelli, you better believe, this is his guy that he's bringing in. So Kekalainen is going to get, I would think, would have equal weight in the mind of Guelli, whatever Kevyn Adams has to say. I don't see this working long-term, Danger. I just don't. Having 2 GMs with 2 different titles, this will all get sorted out.
Well, my hope is that it doesn't get sorted out, because if it does get sorted out, something horrible has happened. That if the Sabres go on another 13-game losing streak, that's somewhere in the middle of that losing streak that's probably going to prevent them from another postseason berth, that's when you would make the move away from Adams or shift Adams to a different role and put Kekalainen in that new GM role.
So you don't think that Adams is going to be kind of shifted over to a new title here at some point?
No, I think that would happen, but I don't think that would happen. I think that would happen if something disastrous were to happen during the course of next season. I don't and maybe I'm misreading this. I don't really think that you're going to make a move shortly after the draft as far as like making a shift or moving Adams into a different role and putting Kekalainen in a short amount of time from senior advisor into the GM role with the Sabres. I think there's a little bit of marinating that has to happen. We have to get through the draft, and I think you have to get through maybe the first quarter of the season and kind of evaluate where are we. Did we have that crippling losing streak like we had in 2024? Because that's when I think you would say, all right, Kevin, enough is enough. We've got a guy, and let's try something different.
Or, yeah, right. So it's not just Kevin. It would be Lindy Ruff, who's in his last year of a contract. If you have another non-playoff year, it's basically, except Kekalainen, I would think everybody out. And, all right, Jarmo, how would you build this?
Right.
Maybe Torts in the end. Remember,
Oh, man.
that would be.
Jeez.
Oh, we would go crazy.
That's right. Yeah. Torts was his guy in Columbus there for a while. Yeah. So he's got some decent stats on his resume. And, whereas I thought the Stahl hiring was kind of a nothing burger, this is something. This is a significant move, and I've yet to find somebody who thinks it's a bad move or is saying anything negative about this move. This is a good addition for the Buffalo Sabres. I'm not going to tell you that adding a senior advisor is going to end the playoff drought. A lot needs to happen, but I can't find anybody who says that this move doesn't make sense or is a bad move for the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, as we get ready for another Cup final, where we will have, one way or another, a former Buffalo Sabre hoisting the trophy. I personally want Edmonton, if nothing more, to add Skinner to that list.
This is the gallows humor that you have as a Sabres fan?
Yes.
Yeah. How many former
like,
Sabres
like
are hoisting
O'Reilly, Captain, Eichel, the Promise.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Opozo, another captain, and Reinhardt.
What do you make of the
Evan Rodriguez.
What do you make of the icy relationship between Ottinger and DeBoer? I mean, DeBoer, not mincing words. I mean, 2 shots, 2 goals, benching them. That just icy relationship between those two.
Well, it was the quote post game where normally, okay, it's done, it's over with. You're not throwing your players under the bus.
No, he's pissed.
He's pissed. Like, leave it to the media to point out, hey, you've lost 6 of 7 to Edmonton. But when you hear it from the head coach and you could put that in quotes, that's a little different. And I don't know if you come back from that and automatically, and so we do this with the Buffalo Bills, okay, well, should we bring Ottinger in?
Yes. Trade. Yeah. Let's trade Ottinger for UPL and JJ Peterka. Done. What else? What else do we have to add to this? Yes. I would take Ottinger right now, today. If that's available, there's your first order of business, Jarmo. Go get him. Take some risks. Let's go.
Yarmo.
Yeah.
Kevin Adams, GM.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. Did I already? I'm sorry. I forgot
You've already made the move.
I've already made the move. I thought that was an interesting end to the series, and we will have a rematch of last year's Cup final between the Florida Panthers and those Edmonton Oilers. And I know we beat a steady drum of Florida in the East and these teams in the East that are representing the East. They're all, Tampa for 3 years. Now it's Florida for 3 years, and Florida has palm trees, and they don't have taxes. And a lot of people are talking about, should the NHL come up with some way to level the playing field, which I don't think will ever happen.
It's a crock of S. Let me explain why. There's other states that don't have taxes, state taxes. Also, if you go to Florida, your insurance rates are higher. So the cost of living, you mean to tell me there's that much of a difference? No. This is coming from the hockey media in Canada. That's where this is coming from. And oh gosh, we're okay. If you want to rally around that, that's fine. I would point to this. Ready? Who had the best organization? Player-wise, I watched it for years with Syracuse. They won a cup, okay, a Calder Cup, and then they won it up. And if you want to say Florida, who's in the final of the Eastern Conference? Who, by the way, they're up 2-0 on Laval. Good. That would be Charlotte. Yeah. You're building organizations the right way. So I would say this: as much as it sucks, stick with it here in Buffalo. Don't do anything drastic. Sure, they have an advantage, but there's no reason. It just sounds very whiny.
There's a few things. I think, one, you're talking about great places to live, right? You're talking about Tampa. You're talking about South Florida. You mentioned it, well-managed teams. You've got great owners. You've got a great hockey ops organization with both of those teams. They treat their players well. The tax advantages on contracts are a thing. We can't pretend like it doesn't exist. But I also think this is something too, and maybe more specific to Tampa than to Miami, but certainly both of those markets feel kind of transient, right? Like the fans and the scrutiny that you would get from a fan in Tampa or in Miami, I think would be a little bit less than you would get in a Boston, Chicago, certainly Toronto, right? The lack of
scrutiny. Like, you can go in a restaurant, no one will bother you.
Lack of media, lack of scrutiny. So you've got all these benefits as to why these teams are doing well, and a couple of them have to do with geography and the financial ramifications. But think about this. It's not new in the NHL. I mean, if you built yourself a time machine, could you convince Wayne Gretzky to never leave Edmonton for the sunny skies and the palm trees of Los Angeles? You're taking a better job. If you have the opportunity, you're going to take the better job. And so I don't think that the tax advantages, while they are a factor, I don't think that they're a factor that you can really do anything about. And if you're an organization looking to get over on Tampa or Florida, be a better organization, because those two organizations in the East right now are setting a standard. And they've been setting that standard for some time now. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, Vincent Viola is the owner of the Panthers, and the Panthers' danger. That was the team. You want to talk about the Sabres being down? You would turn on the television, and there wouldn't be anybody there. That was the team. And then you brought in an owner, and voila, things kind of changed. And this is somebody that made his money 10 times over, and I don't know where his profit loss spreadsheet looks like with the Florida Panthers, but you know what? He made an investment. And I look at Terry Pegula, and you're running this cheap. You are. Now, maybe you're making some improvements finally in the front office, adding some things, but you didn't for how many years? To me, it's you're cutting corners if you're just saying, oh, the CBA needs to be changed and penalize you if you're going to Florida.
Yeah,
Stop with that.
That's not happening. Joe Yurden covers the NHL for Bleacher Report, Sabres, Amerks, and more for Noted Hockey as well. He's going to join us next to talk about those front office moves by the Buffalo Sabres here in the Sports Bar. Danger and Battaglia, glad you're with us. Join anytime, 866-4326, 585-866-4FAN.
Agreed. And I've spent the last 20 years building, running, and
And watch it become your personal sports commentator. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Buffalo Sabres have a new senior advisor. His name is Jarmo Kekalainen. Marty Baron giving his resume.
12 years as a general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before that, he was with the St. Louis Blues for 8 years as a scout and an assistant general manager, and then 7 years with the Ottawa Senators. So he's been in hockey ops for 30 years, and before that, he was a player.
We'll get the thoughts of Joe Yerdon, Bleacher Report, and noted hockey. Joe joining us next year in the Sports Bar. A rematch of the World Series beginning tonight. Yankees and Dodgers highlighting your sports weekend. One game right now in the majors. It's the Reds leading at Wrigley 2-0. They're in the third. Rochester Red Wings looking to make it 5 in a row. Columbus once again the opponent tonight at Innovative Field. Game 6 at Knicks and Pacers is tomorrow night. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester.
Pull up a stool and join us. 585-866-4FAN. 866-4326. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester.
Sabres made a move in their front office. Let's learn more about Jarmo Kekalainen. Joe Yerdon, Bleacher Report. Noted hockey. Always love talking NHL and talking Sabres with our buddy Joe. All right, Joe, so we kind of know the resume. This guy has been at GM and with a pretty good degree of success in the NHL in this senior advisor role. And with it being released on a Friday, I don't know. We're just kind of connecting dots, wondering, like, is Kekalainen next in line? Should this season not go well or this offseason not go well for the Sabres?
Well, that's going to be I think that's the first thought on everybody's mind, honestly, with a hire like this, with a guy that's got that kind of resume. It's going to be very hard to not think that that's the case. But in reality, for the Sabres, this is about getting somebody who's kind of been around the bend, who's got more of that, more NHL connections, more more of a background in the league to kind of, help out, make things a little bit easier to handle, because, Adams hasn't had that. I know he's been in the job for 5 years and whatnot, but, it's been a very kind of insular situation in Buffalo. And, when a lot of that is just kind of, everybody's come from within the organization in different ways, and, the guys that Adams has brought in have been his guys and whatnot. So you're branching out a little bit. You're getting a voice from outside of the organization. You're getting somebody who's got a different set of eyes, and a guy who's been there, and a guy who's done this, who's been in that job, who's been in that seat before, who knows the ins and outs, and has a long record, to his name. So to me, it's about kind of like expanding horizons. And yeah, it's going to be very unavoidable to think that if things get sideways next season and things get bad, that, if a move's made, that Jarmo is going to be assuming that role. And I think that conversation was going to happen regardless of who was hired for that position. You look at some of the other guys they talked to, Ken Holland, Lou Lamoriello, like that discussion was going to happen no matter what.
Yeah, Joe, I would love to hear a press conference with Kekalainen just to know, okay, what exactly are your day-to-day responsibilities? Because you hear the title senior advisor, and look, I think we would all aspire to be the consultant, right? The retired guy that sits on a board, or you're just going to come in and I'm going to tell you what to do and I'm not going to do any heavy lifting. This doesn't feel like this. I mean, for example, is Kekalainen, like, I would think his first order of business just to be, hey, like, actually from your standpoint, evaluate what's going on. How would you fix this?
Yeah, I do wonder if part of that is going to be going to be involved. But I think a lot of what's going to go on with this role is that, this is, Adams is the guy in charge, and, the staff is there and in place, and, Yarmo's going to be there because, he's got his own, wealth of connections. He's got his own wealth of knowledge and insight as to what the job is about. And, he's got his own record of, when it comes to the draft, when it comes to evaluating free agents, all this kind of stuff. It's good to have another set of eyes and another mind about how the job is and what goes into this, and player evaluation too. So I don't think it's so much that he's coming in as, like the Office Space consultants, where he's coming in, he's going to talk to everybody and then decide who stays and who goes. I don't think it's going to be quite like that, but it's bringing somebody who knows what it's all about and who's a very smart guy about hockey and about the business, about everything, to kind of just, sort of ground everything, because sometimes when you've got a staff that's been together for this long, sometimes you get a little guilty of navel gazing. And I think Yarmo's going to be good for, maybe presenting some different ideas and different looks to things.
Joe, I'm curious about how this all went down, because we've seen them make a couple of moves here with Stahl and now with Kekalainen. And I'm curious if this was Adams asking for help, or if this was because we heard when Adams became the GM, it was because Terry wanted to be heard, for lack of a better way of putting it. And Adams is a guy who will listen to what Terry has to say. We also know that there's a guy in here now in Pete Goelli who probably doesn't have a ton to do with all of the decisions of running these organizations, but I wouldn't say it's a zero. And Kevin Adams wasn't hired when Pete Goelli was part of the organization. So I guess Goelli is a guy that I'm kind of curious about as far as what his involvement might be in his relationship with Terry Pegula, and which direction did this go? Did this come from Terry on down, or do you think this was Kevin saying, hey, throw me a line here and give me some resources?
I tend to believe it's a little bit of both, from Terry and from Kevin, because I think it was Kevin who mentioned that to us at the end of the year press conference, that we're going to look for some other ideas here, and maybe get things to be a little bit different when it comes to evaluating everything and looking at everything, because let's face it, when it's 5 years out of the playoffs and you've been in the job, the choice is either, well, maybe we got to take a peek around and see what else is going on, or you're getting the pink slip and you're out, and somebody else is going to get to do the job. So in that respect, I think it's better to it's certainly better for Kevin to get some guys in there that can provide another set of eyes and people that he trusts. Obviously he knows Eric Stahl well from, they were teammates together. He traded for him a few years ago to be in Buffalo. Granted, I don't think anybody will look back fondly on that time, but Eric included. But in this case, it's it's something where it's like, it's either find a new way to do things, or we'll find other people to find a new way to do things. And yeah, the whole part about Kevin being hired because Pegula's felt like they weren't being listened to. I mean, that's that time was a little different, because that was peak pandemic, and nobody knew what was going to happen. The ownership was very concerned about money and whatnot. So if they had ideas of like, hey, we want to do this, and Jason Botterill was like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And then they were like, well, we're the owners. What we say goes. So if you don't want to do that, then see you later, bud. And that's more or less what happened. But I think in this case, it's something where it's a little bit of self-preservation, but it's also just trying to do what's right to fix what's going on here. I think that's the bigger part of it.
Joe Yerdon, Bleacher Report, noted hockey, joining us. Joe, life moves fast, as you know. It was this time only 5 days ago that, hey, we're getting ready here for Game 5 up in suburban Montreal, talking about the Amerks there. Amerks season is over, and when you look at the Amerks season, I mean, your thoughts on that, and I guess the headline story here is Devin Levi, because Joe, I can't tell you definitively if he's going to be, up with the Sabre organization day one, based on what we saw here this postseason.
Yeah, it's wild how things change, isn't it? You know, that the opening series against Syracuse was, you know, the best that we've seen of Devin Levi. I mean, you know, he pitches a couple shutouts, was on an unbelievable tear going into it. But, you know, I wonder what the view is that you have to take, considering there's 2 weeks off between the end of that series and the start up against Laval. And, you know, goaltending is a lot about rhythm. And I do wonder if there's going to be part of that's going to be part of the discussion of how you evaluate how that turned out, because, you know, two of the last 3 games against Laval did not look good for Devin. But, and, you know, I think myself included, we were expecting to see the absolute best of him going, you know, playing on home ice and, you know, being in the playoffs, and he loves this big spotlight and everything. But I mean, there's also the part of it where Laval was the best team in the AHL this year. And, you know, there's a lot to take away from that as well, because you have to, you know, it's the different lenses you got to look at everything here. But when it comes to Devin and, you know, is he in Buffalo next year? Is he not? You know, it's not crazy, but it's so tough for the Sabres to have to, you know, seemingly every other year have to ask a lot of questions about like what the goaltending situation is going to be for the organization, you know, year to year and whatnot. Because, you know, we were having these discussions a couple of years ago when Devin was signed and, you know, almost got the team to the postseason. And then, you know, you're asking like, well, okay, is Devin the guy? Is it, you know, is Luukkonen still going to be around? Like, what's going on there? And then, you know, Luukkonen took the job back, played great last season, and, you know, and all that. And then this year was a lot tougher because, you know, for 100 different reasons. But you look at how Devin performed against Laval, and it was, you know, there was a couple of really good outings, but the few that, you know, I think even he would love a do-over on and want to have another shot at trying to do better there. But I think you have to look at the body of work of how Devin performed in the AHL, and then, you know, and look at how he performed in the NHL when he had his opportunities, and decide like, is now the time for him? Because they've been eager to try to step on the gas and to get him into the NHL, and it just hasn't been right yet. And if the plan is to go into next season with Luukkonen and Levi, I think you're playing with fire, because you got to know how Luukkonen's going to bounce back. Personally, I think Luukkonen's going to be a lot better because he's going to be very angry and motivated. And I think, you know, in Levi's case, he wants it. He wants the NHL bad, and it's up to him to be focused enough to be able to do it all the time. But, you know, you're asking a couple of young goalies to split time, and, you know, Lindy doesn't like to mess around too much. If a guy gets hot, he's got to keep playing him.
Joe, you talk about angry goaltenders. I think we have one in Dallas. Jake Ottinger getting pulled last night. Pete DeBoer, you know, very icy with his star goaltender. What do you think the future is for Ottinger? Do you think this is just high emotion in a volatile moment, and this will blow over and he'll be fine long term? Or is there something more sinister at play here? Could Ottinger be somebody that DeBoer has just seen enough of?
You know, I was really curious to what Pete was going to say following that game, given that, you know, he pulls them after
he didn't hold back,
giving up goals in the first 2 shots, and then pulls them and it rides with Casey DeSmith for the rest of the game. And Casey didn't, you know, every time Dallas got within a goal, they were giving one right back. And Pete didn't hold back, and he basically said, you know, Jake's been bad against Edmonton for 6 games in a row now, or 7 games going back to last playoffs. And he's like, well, it's time for another look. Well, I don't know. I think I would rather consult with Jim Nill about that than I would Pete DeBoer, honestly, because, you know, Ottinger's been one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, period, the last 3-4 years. And now you're trying to tell me, and you're trying to tell everybody that, well, he ain't got it against Edmonton because, you know, the results are the results. And I mean, at that point, if I'm Nill, I'm asking like, well, Pete, do you want to coach here or do you not? Because if it's between player, who has been outstanding, and coach, who seems to wear out his welcome everywhere he goes, I'm starting to wonder, is this it for Pete? Because
interesting,
you know, it's the sort of thing where you're like, you know, I don't know, man, like elite goalies are hard to find. They're really hard to find, and Ottinger's one of them. And if you're going to run them out, you know, if you're going to throw them under the bus like that after a series where your whole team didn't really play all that great, you know, I mean, blame it on the having to who they had to play in the first 2 rounds. Do whatever you want. You got to play Colorado. You got to play Winnipeg back to back. Like, okay, but I don't know, man. Like it's crazy. It's crazy to me to take your all-star top 5 goalie in the NHL and just be like, yeah, no, he's the reason why we lost. Like, I don't know, man. Stop taking penalties. Stop putting the best power play in the NHL. One of the best power plays that's been in the NHL the last 4 years out on the ice constantly. It was just reckless play from Dallas up and down, and she just keeps throwing it on the goal. Yeah, goalie's got to make some saves now and again, but geez, you're Leon Draisaitl can score from minus degrees, below the goal line with a one-timer. I mean, it's stupid to keep giving these guys chances, and they kept doing it, and then saying like, well, geez, Jake, we need a save. Like, well, I don't know, man, go score some goals.
Well, I now we get the rematch here, Edmonton and Florida, and this time around it'll be a little different, seeing that Edmonton's got the home ice here. Should it go to game 6 or 7? So your initial thought here, could this be any different? Because I don't know, both these teams kind of going into the Stanley Cup final on a roll here, Joe.
Yeah, it's I wrote up my Cup final prediction, which will be up on Bleacher Report here probably in a few days, but. It got me thinking back to the last few times we've seen teams face each other back-to-back years. Obviously, 08, 09, Detroit and Pittsburgh did it. And it was, Sidney Crosby coming up short in 08. And it was, it's like, well, he's got to get his at one point. And then he got his the next year. And, Detroit had their chances to beat him 2 years in a row and then blew it in 09. But I think back to granted, I wasn't really – I was not old enough to be paying attention to this back then, but Islanders Oilers, it was dynasty passing the torch to the next dynasty. The Islanders sweep them in '84. The Oilers come back the next year, beat them in 5, and then went on and were beasts for the rest of the '80s. And you think you give great players a chance. 2 times in a row to finally get over the hump and win a cup. You think well, they got to take it, right? But Florida, man, Florida's in their prime too. Those Isles and those Wings teams were old. This Florida team is not old. Maybe Bob's the oldest guy on the ice, but the talent level and, listen, I know McDavid won the Conn Smythe last year. He was awesome all playoffs. Barkov had his number in the finals, and I don't know that got paid attention to closely enough just because of how gaudy McDavid's numbers were. But Barkov shut him down, and Barkov looks incredible again. And they've got the troll game down. They've got all this stuff. They play nasty. They've been evil in the playoffs ever since they beat Toronto in Game 3. Came back to beat them in Game 3. It's really hard to say no to Florida because they've looked more the part of a cup team, a cup winning team that I think Edmonton has. And that's not to take anything away from Edmonton. They've been incredible since Game 3 against LA. And Skinner's been a completely different player in goal for them. But I mean, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And Florida really looks like the man.
Yeah. And Joe, I was going to say, what do you think the likelihood is Florida hoisting the cup and McDavid's ignoring the Conn Smythe for a second year in a row, that we have the exact same output as we had last year at this time? I haven't looked closely enough at McDavid's numbers or Draisaitl's numbers, but we're close.
I think it's still really gaudy. But I mean, I think Skinner's getting a lot more attention. I think that's rightfully so because he's been awesome since he took the starting job back in the LA series. I think he's worthy of a lot of the attention. But gee whiz, man, Barkov has been incredible. And even, as much as people hate it, Bennett's been awesome too, even though he's played as dirty as they get. 11 goals in the playoffs. He's been great too. But geez, I mean, Barkov's like a silent assassin, man. He shuts you down and then he kills you. I mean, that pass he makes to Verhaeghe in game 5 against Carolina, or game 5, game 6, game 5. Was just like, oh, okay, all right. That's the respect given to Barkov and what he can do, and then Verhaeghe's just there for the put away. It's really tough. I'm glad I'm not. I would love to be a Conn Smythe voter at some point in my career, but I'm really glad I'm not one of them this year.
Joe, one of the things that's being discussed, 6 straight years now with a team based in Florida representing the Eastern Conference. Are you buying into the NHL should take a look at this, that these two franchises because of the state taxes, have an unfair advantage?
We're the national predators right now. They're saying they have the same advantage, and they've made big moves, and they're not getting it done. Yeah, Vegas has, but Vegas also has, they have management that will try to win no matter what. Like, they don't care about the future. The future is right now, and they're going to push in no matter what. Like, I wouldn't be shocked to see like Mitch Marner wind up in Vegas next year, like sign him with Vegas over the summer, because why not, right? I get that it's an advantage. It's obviously an advantage, and like it works mostly against the Canadian teams because the Canadian taxes are much higher. But there's so many factors at play when guys want to sign up for teams. I mean, like Florida got Kachuk in a trade, after they signed a guy to a big contract, and then they dumped that guy with a big contract off to Calgary. Tampa Bay is good because they've had great management for their entire run here for like 15, 20 years. Having good management it works wonders when you've got a slight advantage when it comes to taxes. Yeah, I know it works in a lot more take-home money, but I don't know. I think if you put a team with really bad management in a place that has that advantage, I don't think you have to worry about that team, honestly. Because they're not going to be able to. If you're not picking the right guys and you're just signing the wrong guys to big money, and because they get paid, then you're not going to win. Having the right coaches, having the right management is such a bigger difference than anything else. And honestly, if you got a team that wins, that sells everything even more. LA didn't have a problem bringing guys in when they were winning cups. Chicago, same thing. Like it's easy when you got the guys and you win, because then everybody wants to play for you.
And Joe, I'm curious about this too, if this is a factor or not. And being that you're in the media and you're covering not just our local teams, but also you're covering the NHL. Does a lack of media in some of these markets or a lack of fan scrutiny in some of these markets actually work out to be a positive? I mean, let's face it. If you're in Vegas, there's a lot going on, and the nights are kind of like a sideshow, and a lot of those guys could probably walk around and not get recognized. Certainly, in a market like Tampa or in Miami, I would imagine that there's a little bit less fan scrutiny than there is certainly in a Buffalo or a Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that helps too. I asked Paul Maurice about that after they knocked out the Leafs. Asked the question in a way where I said, is there a point where because he coached with and against the Leafs in the past, is there a point where you got them? And he's like, no, there's no point. But he pointed out how in Toronto, what's great for the league is bad for Toronto because it's the attention, it's the money they generate, all that stuff. Because Toronto kind of helps prop up the league. But yeah, the attention's a lot, but I don't know, the pressure to win exists everywhere. And, not having to answer questions about it. I mean, sure, I guess that makes the day-to-day easier, but, you still got to deal with your coaches. The coaches are more scrutinizing and a lot tougher on you than anybody in the media is. And, granted, what coaches tell you doesn't wind up on websites or, TikTok or Instagram or whatever, that doesn't end up there. But, it's the pressure comes from within. And honestly, if the attention that comes from answering a few questions is too much, then I don't know if you got it, period. Because if you can deal with all the stuff on the ice and a couple of questions is what throws you off your game, I'm sorry, man. There's another problem at hand in that case. But sure, does it make life easier? I'm sure it does. But I don't know. I don't buy that a guy's got these big tough guys and serious competitors can't handle media attention or fans, stopping them. Okay, man, I don't know. You're an elite star athlete. You're going to get paid attention to no matter what. Is it easier when the sun's out all year and you can go play golf everywhere? Yeah, I bet it is. Everybody's distracted, but I don't know. It's part and parcel with the job. Everything is part of the deal. And I guess if you want it easier, sure, okay, but I don't know. I don't buy that as distractions. I buy that as that's excuse making.
Maybe just move the NHL season to now. Wouldn't that help us? Like, it's outside right now. You can sell anybody here in Western New York. Beautiful out, Joe. Joe Yerdon, Bleacher Report, noted hockey. You mentioned you've got the preview that's coming up here in a few days. What else can we check out, Joe?
Yeah, we got the draft combine starting next week, so we're gonna have a lot of stuff going on about that. I'll have some looks into who the Sabres should be taking a look at with that first pick, or should they keep the pick? Should they keep their first round pick? We'll get into that stuff. Cup final begins on the 3rd, I think. So yeah, I mean this is the last roundup before we gear up for the draft, and then everybody goes home for the summer. So yeah, it should be fun.
Joe, enjoy your weekend. Thanks as always for the time. We'll be checking out your work at Bleacher Report and Noted Hockey. Appreciate it, buddy.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks again for having me.
No problem. Thanks, Joe Yerdon. Read his work at Bleacher Report, covering the NHL, Noted Hockey, talking about the Sabres and their hire of Jarmo Kekalainen, the front office there, now a senior advisor for the Buffalo Sabres.
Well, a team that was not interesting got a little interesting with this hire.
The Sabres.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, this move is more of a needle mover than hiring Eric Stahl, for sure. For sure, there's no question about it. So, and I think that the timing of it is a little curious. I think doing this on a Friday is something as well. Doing it on a Friday, yeah. So, interesting times in Saberland. We'll talk more about that here throughout the course of the afternoon. Next hour, we go to Pittsburgh and check in with Chris Mack. You can hear him on the BetMGM network. Our favorite Yinzer, Steelers OTAs wrapping up, and as far as we've seen, no sign of Aaron Rodgers, no contract for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it's got to be playing real well in Pittsburgh, I would imagine, at this point. There is a prominent NFL media figure who's making a prediction that I think most people are like, no, that wouldn't happen. I'm going to tell you why I think there's nothing the fans have to worry about.
All right, we'll get to that and more next. We have time for your calls as well if you want to pull up a stool and join us in the sports bar. 585-866-4FAN is our phone number, 866-4326.
Groggy start into a game-winning day. WROC AM, WBEE HD2, and W239BF Rochester. The sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
Buffalo Sabres have a new senior advisor, Jarmo Kekalainen. Kekalainen, the former GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yankees-Dodgers highlighting your baseball weekend. That's a late start tonight on the West Coast. It'll be the Sunday night game of the week. Tonight, the Mets hosting the Rockies. The Red Sox are in Atlanta. Just one game currently in the majors. The Reds leading the Cubs at Wrigley 6-0. They're in the bottom of the seventh. Rochester Red Wings look to make it 5 in a row tonight. Columbus once again the opponent out at Innovative Field. The Knicks forcing a Game 6, hoping to get it to a Game 7. Knicks and Pacers tomorrow night in Indiana. Sports is brought to you by GetMyPerks.com. Today, get 2 buckets for the price of 1 to Big O Golf Shop and Driving Range. For this on the great deals, log on to GetMyPerks.com today. Keep it tagged with the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Today is Friday.
I don't know if you guys know this. We are officially in best shape of their life season right now.
Mike Danger.
Your Honor, I'm a freak bitch. Handcuffs, leashes, switch my wig, make him feel like he's cheating, put him on his knees, give him something to believe in. Never lost a fight, but I'm looking for a beating.
Gene Battaglia.
Oh, TMZ Rochester, the sports bar.
There you go.
Yeah, and we got more coming up.
And the New York Knicks have looked elimination in the eye, and they are alive and kicking.
The Edmonton Oilers pour onto the ice. They are the Western Conference champions for the second year in a row. It's Edmonton and Florida in the Stanley Cup final.
I think a rematch is really good for hockey.
The Sabres hired the senior advisor, Jarmo Kekalainen.
There isn't a single dating website out there made for me and you.
95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
We welcome you back into the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Big thanks to Joe Yurden, Bleacher Report, Noted Hockey, joined us last hour to talk about that hiring of Jarmo Kekalainen, senior advisor now for the Buffalo Sabres, but a guy with a pretty hefty resume, many years as the GM in Columbus, now in that role with the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, that's something that's noteworthy, as Joe pointed out. Combine next week, draft coming up here in a few weeks. I mean, Sunday, crying out loud, it's in the month of June. So, and then July 1st, you have free agency. So, on the one hand, Danger, it's the clock's ticking. If he really is going to have a voice in the room, bring him in as soon as possible. I'd also say got to wait until Monday to make this announcement. So I'm always skeptical of the story that is put out there on a Friday. Like, what's the reasoning behind it?
WGR's Paul Hamilton sharing his thoughts on the hire.
He's done, a bunch of different things in the NHL, including being a general manager, which is key. He was the GM for the Columbus Blue Jackets from 2013 to 2024. But before that, he was director of player personnel with the Senators. He was assistant GM and director of amateur scouting with the Blues. Then he went back over to Finland to be the GM at Jokerit. He's had different experiences in hockey departments. And so I think that's going to be key for him to, be a helpful part of the department. And he'll be, an advisor to Adams in all areas of the hockey department. I don't think there's anything they wouldn't ask him to talk about or do or anything like that. So it's something that I think has been badly needed. It's unfortunate that Terry Pegula didn't see this when he hired Adams. He hired a guy who had never been a GM before. Okay, fine. This would have been a perfect hire back. Well, he was the GM of the Blue Jackets by then, but a guy like this would have been a perfect hire back then to give him a sounding board and to give him guidance and as he, tried to maneuver through being a GM for the first time. So, they're doing it now, 5 years later, but, I think it's something that would have been great to do earlier in his tenure.
Well, 5 years later. I mean, it's better late than never, I suppose. So there you go. There's Paul Hamilton on GR earlier today talking about this new hire for the Buffalo Sabres.
Speaking of hires, I'm going to take you down a little bit of a road here, Danger, because you are somebody who has some weight here in our company, a regional brand manager, right?
I don't like to talk about myself, Gino.
Have you ever made the call, like, on behalf of somebody, like, hey, you should hire this person?
I have.
So
I think that's a good move. I think if you have an experience, a shared experience, whether it's you work together or you know of each other or you've spent time together and you have an opportunity to help somebody, I think that good karma comes back your way. I know that a lot of like EEO reports and there's a lot of things that you have to, but like if I'm saying something positive about somebody that I have a positive feeling about, isn't that good karma? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Isn't that?
Yeah, I think that good managers would do that. You would recommend somebody. But now let's take it a step further. Like, at what level would you have to be at in any field where you would pick up the phone to a business that maybe you're not familiar with and say, hey, I want you to hire this person and give them a 6-figure income? Where am I going with this?
I'm wondering.
He's crossing his mind.
Yeah.
This is the latest Pablo Torre nugget.
Yeah.
Pablo Torre. My goodness. He is the king of content that is serial. Like, he's just going to give you like a nugget here or there, here or there.
You know, not to interrupt, because we're going to get to this story, and we've we hit our quota every day. We got to make sure we hit on Belichick and Hudson every day. I'm going to propose something to the guys listening right now. Guys, you want to deepen your relationship with your significant other? Start talking about the drama and the gossip around sports. Because when you look at the history of some of the more salacious stories that we've lived through, that is as good as any true crime podcast that your wife might listen to. Start talking about the drama between Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson. You know, bring up the Aaron Hernandez story from time to time. Or who was the guy in Cleveland that was with LeBron's rumored to be with LeBron's? You remember that story? Corey Perry in Chicago, right? Like all of these different like little salacious scandals and stories. There's gossip in the world of sports that is unmatched. And if you get your significant other as invested in it, it will deepen her relationship with sports as well.
Well, this is why we're into this story, because it's in real time. We know we have a gut feeling. There's more to the story here when it comes to Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson. And you have Wickersham, you have all these reporters, and Pablo Torre. He's made a cottage industry of this and his podcast became a must listen to. But him telling Pro Football Talk that Bill Belichick called around to get Jordan Hudson 6-figure jobs on the media enterprises that he was working for. So in other words, whether it was that CW show or whatever he was connected with, picking up the phone, hey, hire her.
ESPN, hire my girlfriend.
Hire my girlfriend
right.
And give her a 6-figure job. Which then you look at her resume and it's like, oh my gosh, this is like kind of just like a shakedown, right?
What was her deal? She was a nail tech? Hairdresser.
She was a hairdresser and went to Bridgewater State for a semester.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, I can't look down on somebody who didn't go to college. That's fine. I'm not going to.
You did this.
I did the same
thing. Yeah.
Jordan Hudson could very easily be your next co-host on the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Gino, she's got the same resume as I do.
And why this is, fair game to be under scrutiny. Bill Belichick is a public employee. You're working for the University of North Carolina. You are the highest paid public employee in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
By the way, the buyout is coming up on Sunday. Nobody's saying anything one way or another. Reiterate here, my take on it is that North Carolina is making money off this. Their program has never been more relevant, and they're not walking away from this. I don't know if Bill Belichick would walk away. I doubt that either. So fully expect Bill Belichick to be on the sidelines Labor Day weekend.
So that's the report from Torre that Belichick was picking up the phone and calling his outlets and saying, hey.
Jordan's great. She can add a lot here. Can get a little extra in the budget for her. Wow. What does she have on him?
You know what she has on him. Everybody should know what she has on him. Was he on Inside the NFL? Because that show is gone now, by the way. Did you see that?
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, CW had Inside the NFL for the past 2 years. Now, we're going to date ourselves a little bit here because Inside the NFL used to be appointment TV. You would watch it every week on HBO. That was how you got your highlights. That was a more in-depth highlight package than you would get on Sunday night or on Monday Night Football when they would show highlights during halftime.
Nick Bonacounty, Len Dawson, and we have that show to blame for the birth of Chris Collinsworth as a broadcaster.
Correct. Yeah. CW had been hosting Inside the NFL for the last 2 seasons. They did not renew the show. So we talked about how it used to be on HBO. It's been 13 years on Showtime, a small run on Paramount Plus, and Homeless in 2025 as of right now. So I'm trying to remember. Belichick was on that last year.
He was on that, and he would do like an X and O thing. And I remember one time he's breaking down how do you put a spy on Josh Allen, and it was informative, and it's kind of disappointing. But the day and age of the highlight show coming out midweek, let's revisit things. It's
old news at that point.
Yeah, even like when they do, okay, Monday Night Football, here's Chris Berman. I'm like, okay, the highlights I've seen 10 times each year, not interested.
Right. Yes, exactly right. The world has changed.
Peter King. Look, I'll give Peter King credit. He changed with the times. He adapted, but now he's retired, but he's not totally out of things. He's still weighing in on topics, and well, this is a topic he's bringing up. This caught my attention, Danger. King believes that within our lifetime, the NFL draft will be gone. Players from the Big Ten, SEC, they will declare when they're ready for the draft, and they will simply choose which organization they want to go to. Now, could I see the union pushing for this? Of course. Like, yeah, you want more freedom, you want more ability where you want to live, but I don't think when the union is bringing up things in the next negotiation, that's nowhere near the number one issue they would want. They would want better pay. They would want more time off in the spring. They would want more jobs, expand the roster size, okay? I would think those would all come before abolishing the NFL draft. Certainly the league doesn't want this. Of course, we would get nervous in Western New York. Oh, my gosh, competitive balance. Well, it's not just that. The NFL draft is a massive money-making industry for the league. They can't give that. How would you make that up? So on that standpoint, I totally disagree with King.
I get what you're saying, and I agree with the part of the draft being a moneymaker. They've turned it into a major event. It's not the Super Bowl, but it's up there. It's making them money when they're bidding it and farming it out to different markets, and it's good for the economy in those markets and the real estate around the stadiums or the venues that they're holding it in. The thing that I'm curious about, because you're hearing whispers about how in the next CBA the owners maybe want a little bit of a bigger piece of the pie. And right now it's 50-50, right? It's split equally between the owners and the players. And the NFL, we keep saying this, like, why mess with a good thing? You've got a really good thing going here. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? Well, of course, the owners want a little bit more. And if they do that, what would the players get in return? If, let's say, it became a 55-45, would you give up certain things? That's the only pathway I could see where this would potentially even be discussed.
I think that when the next, and this is going to hurt Brandon Beane and some other crafty GMs, they're going to tighten up things on the salary cap. For example, Joey Bosa. All right, well, if it doesn't work out, is it going to kill the Bills on the cap this year? No. What's one of the reasons why? Void years. You can spread that out. I can't even explain to you how void years exactly work here in 20 seconds other than tell you it's a way to kind of lessen the blow. Look at what the Saints have done. If you can make something a little more tighter to make up the cash output to what is actually going out on the field and you're not extending yourself, there's some owners that just can't keep up with some of these other ones in terms of fronting money. So I think that the NFL in that regard, and it's a sneaky way to kind of tighten up the salary cap, but I would be shocked if the union said, all right, you know what, we're going to give you a percentage point back. Hell no. Wouldn't do that at all.
It's an interesting take, though, by King, and man, I would love to pick his brain about that further. And I wonder how much of it stems from just how entitled the college athlete appears right now. I'm not even saying that they are, because they're getting paid now. They are.
Well, if it gets to a point, Danger, where your top college athletes are actually going to take a pay cut,
correct,
to come into the NFL. And hey, you know what? No, I I'm good. Thank you, Jaguars. I'm not going there. It would take a precedent like that. Like, nah, I'm not going to go because I'm.
But we've seen that. I mean, if Caleb Williams truly didn't want to go to Chicago, then he would not have gone to Chicago. Like, we've seen that. That's not unprecedented. We've seen Elway do it. We saw Manning do it. I mean, like, there are instances where that has happened, and honestly, I think there are going to be more instances in the future where that will happen again, where a player just says, nah, I'm not going to play for that team.
Yeah, and look, this is something really can't challenge in court because it's collectively bargained. That's the players' union in the NFL. And the one thing, the dynamic is this, that you're a veteran in your second contract. You're not necessarily looking out for those guys coming into the league. You want to kind of protect your own turf. So I don't see there being some, let's do the betterment here. Let's get rid of the draft. No, I don't see all of a sudden the player reps from every team kind of uniting on this front.
Did you hear what Joe Flacco said the other day
I did.
at OTAs? I thought it was just so well said by somebody who's been in the league a long time. And I've heard quarterbacks come right out and say, like, and I can't remember who the latest example of this was, but like when they get asked, hey, are you excited to be a mentor for insert young rookie quarterback here? And we've had quarterbacks in the past. No. Tannehill was one of those guys.
Oh, Ben Roethlisberger. When they draft,
right.
And like, in Roethlisberger's point is like, why are we drafting a quarterback in the third round, Mason Rudolph, when we could actually draft somebody that could help us on this team? Well, aren't you going to mentor? No, that's not my job. And that was a divisive topic. And I'm like, why is that divisive? You can be a good teammate, but you don't need to be a mentor. You're not a coach. You're not training somebody to take over your job. Pushes you a little bit. That's not a bad thing, but you're not going to, like, be a mentor. Stop with that.
This is Joe Flacco on our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland.
It's a talking point. You can kind of, like, use it, like, because it's a good question to bait somebody into answering. And no matter how they answer it, it kind of makes the guy that's answering it look bad. If I say I don't want to be a mentor, I look bad. If I say I do want to be a mentor, then I look like an idiot that doesn't care about being good and playing football. So it's one of those questions that no matter what I say, you guys can write what you want to write about it. And there's a lot of questions like that. That's why you end up having to try to avoid them. I tend to try to be honest. And I've said I'm not a mentor. I play football. And in a quarterback room, there's a lot of times there's been a ton of times where there's learning experiences, and I have a lot of experience, and I can talk on things, and hopefully they listen. But it's not necessarily like my job to like make sure they listen to me. And hey, like hopefully you have a really good relationship with the guys that are in the room, and you naturally want to do that, But that was a long-winded answer, but that's ultimately why I think you guys ask it, Here's the thing is, like, because of what I just said, like, you're acting like I wouldn't want to be a mentor. It's like, once again, it's not really about that. It's just not the main focus. I see myself as a guy that can play in this league. So if your main focus was just like, hey, but I'm going to get you ready, you're just not taking care of business. The best way to be a mentor, honestly, is, like, show people how you go to work, and like I said, hope that they pick up on that stuff, but not necessarily force them to pick up on the things that you do.
Show people how you go to work.
Wow. I mean, that lays it out. And it is kind of a gotcha question.
It's a total trap.
Yeah.
It's an absolute trap because he's right. You can't answer it the right way. If Joe Flacco says, I'm looking forward to mentoring Shedeur Sanders, and everybody's going to assume that Joe Flacco has no interest in being the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Dude wants to play. He's a competitor. He wants to be out there. So really all you can do is show them how you work. Just show them how you work, and if they pick up on that, then great. But it's up to the young player to look at that and say, do I want to emulate that? Do I want to do it my own way? Do I think he's crazy? And there's so many guys in the NFL, when you look around the league, that are in that now perennial backup role. Like I think of a guy like Case Keenum, who was here for a season, right? Yeah, Case Keenum was clearly not going to beat Josh Allen in any quarterback competition, but Josh Allen was still young, and Case Keenum didn't come in here and be like, I'm going to mentor Josh Allen because I took the Vikings to the play, and I worked with Diggs and blah, blah, blah. And like, didn't work that way.
Pay close attention when we get to training camp time because it's not just the quarterback position. Tre'Davious, are you going to mentor Maxwell Harrison?
Right.
Tre'Davious White thinks in his mind
You have to.
I will be starting.
I'm
week one.
invincible.
Yeah, you don't want you can't be showing at that point you're just a coach. I would think maybe the exception here might be Micah Hyde, but maybe Micah Hyde really thought I'm going to come back and I'm going to be on the field here at some point.
The Cleveland Browns have a more definitive plan at quarterback than the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. Chris Mack, our favorite Yinzer, BetMGM Network. He's in Pittsburgh. We're going to talk a little bit about Steelers OTAs from this week, which include no Aaron Rodgers. What's going on with Pittsburgh? And we'll get into the Paul Skeens conversation with Mack as well. Can't wait for this conversation with Chris Mack joining us from Pittsburgh next on The Fan.
You're listening. Things up. Download the Odyssey app and listen to 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan Rochester when you wake up, because mornings are better with sports.
Tonight, Expect showers and thunderstorms with a low of 51.
Weather brought to you by Staples. Have you heard? The Staples Easy button is back with even more easy. Press it for custom prints, shipping services, even passport photos. Staples. That was easy.
The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester. If your mornings are missing that sports kick, let Maggie and Perloff save the day. Listen to 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester, weekday mornings. Because who needs more sleep when you can have sports excitement? The Fan, Rochester, Sports Update.
A new man in the front office for the Buffalo Sabres, Jarmo Kekalainen. Marty Baron giving his resume.
12 years as a general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before that, he was with the St. Louis Blues for 8 years as a scout and an assistant general manager, and then 7 years with the Ottawa Senators. So he's been in hockey ops for 30 years, and before that, he was a player.
Kekalainen, the new senior advisor to GM Kevin Adams. Yankees and Dodgers highlighting your baseball weekend. That is a late start tonight on the West Coast. Mets opening against the Rockies. The Red Sox are in Atlanta. Just going one game right now in the majors. The Reds leading the Cubs 6-2. They're in the 8th. The Wings look to make it 5 in a row tonight. Columbus once again the opponent at Innovative Field. Game 6 coming up tomorrow night. Knicks and Pacers. Indiana leading 3-2. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Straight up with no chaser. You're in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
I ain't doing that darkness retreat. I don't need any of that crap. Like, either you want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler or you don't. That's simple. That's the pitch. Like, if you want me to recruit, that's the recruiting pitch. You know, Pittsburgh Steelers, if you want to be part of it, so be it. If you don't, no skin on my back.
Pittsburgh Steeler defensive tackle Cam Hayward earlier this offseason as OTAs wrap up around the NFL. We've spent some time talking about what's going on in Pittsburgh with the lack of what appears to be any sort of quarterback plan, or at least we're waiting on Aaron Rodgers to sign a deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We welcome in our favorite Yinzer from the BetMGM Network. You can hear him weekends here on The Fan. Our buddy Chris Mack. What's going on, Chris? I mean, it can't be Will Howard and a guy who was once benched for Duck Hodges week 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. How important is it for Aaron Rodgers to make a commitment here? How important it is for the Steelers to meet Rodgers' demands?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the demands. He was pretty clear when he was on the Pat McAfee show about a month ago, guys, that he'll play for $10 million, which is pretty low cost for a franchise quarterback and a guy who's won 4 MVPs and a Super Bowl as long ago as it was. So I don't think it's finances. I do take some stock in what Rodgers said on that same appearance with McAfee, where he noted that he's got stuff going on. I think as much of it may be that he doesn't want to catch a bunch of heat again for not attending OTAs after signing with a new team. We remember what he went through with the Jets a couple years ago, and OTAs, the optional part of these June practices, wrap up next Thursday. So there is a pretty strong feeling. I also co-host a podcast with Mark Cavalli here in Pittsburgh, Cavalli and Mac, which you can find on YouTube, plug. And Mark's been covering the team for 2 decades now, and he's of the belief that as soon as these optional part of the team activities are over, Rodgers will be here in Pittsburgh, maybe taking part in a few of those mandatory mini-camp practices in a couple weeks, and then ready to go for training camp. And that's really the sense around the organization as a whole, guys, that Rodgers will be here eventually, that if something were to happen and he does flake out, you know, the contingency plans would be either Mason Rudolph, who some people in the organization still have a lot of belief in, a lot of fans, myself included, still have a decent amount of belief in Mason Rudolph. He won 3 games down the stretch for them 2 years ago and got him into a wild card, the Blizzards over in Buffalo. And then there's always, if for some reason Mike Tomlin really wasn't happy with that idea, that maybe they would take a swing on Kirk Cousins and adding him to the fold. If the Falcons get tired of sitting on him, and the ask as far as, you know, how much of the contract has to be taken on wouldn't be too hefty. So they have their contingency plans in place. I don't think it involves Will Howard starting it all this year, seeing any significant time, unless there's multiple injuries, in which case your season's starting to swirl the drain anyway if you're losing your top or one or two quarterbacks. So probably not Howard. He admitted his struggles in the first couple days of OTAs yesterday. Probably not even Rudolph, although it's a solid backup to have. It probably will be Rodgers, maybe as soon as, a week, 10 days from now when they transition to the mandatory part of these June practices.
Chris, how's it going over with the fan base there? Because when you have Pittsburgh sports royalty this week and Terry Bradshaw telling the guy Rodgers to go eat bark, I'm just wondering, at what point, or are we at that point where, Steelers fans are just kind of throwing their hands up into the air?
Well, I will say earlier in the offseason, there was a lot of frustration with what seemed like a lack of a plan, that they didn't maybe go as far as they could have to try and retain Justin Fields, who a lot of people in town liked when they saw him start 4-2 last year, that they seemingly had no interest in Russell Wilson, who, again, when he took over, won 7 games before things went down the toilet late in the year, and then not having any real solid plan in the direction of anybody else that was available. Some mild interest in Sam Darnold, but not at the price tag that he ended up going to Seattle for. Maybe a few exploratory talks with the Rams about Matt Stafford before that whole thing cooled off. But a lot of fans earlier in the offseason, guys, were upset at what seemed like a lack of a plan. More people now, I think, understand that the plan since Fields signed with the Jets has been to hone in on Rodgers. And I think whether they like Rodgers and some of his, I don't know if we call them political, scientific, whatever thoughts on the world, they want a quarterback who can come in and help the team win some games with this defense as it starts to get a little older, right? You played a Cam Hayward bumping back from that break. Cam's not getting any younger. T.J. Watt's not getting any younger. Might be getting his last long-term contract extension here this summer. Minkah Fitzpatrick, really, not even getting any younger. He's in his late 20s now. So they're trying to capitalize on what they have with this defense, with a quarterback, as stopgap as it may be in Rodgers, and I think fans are resigned to that fact. It did surprise me. We talked to Rudolph last week or the week before on our show, and the fan reaction, I'd say 90% of the comments and replies and mentions were supportive of Mason because he's really come in. They've seen him. He's gone through it here in Pittsburgh. Let's be honest. The guy that was supposed to be his mentor, the number one when he was drafted, showed an open distaste for the fact that they drafted him and Ben Roethlisberger. Then he got hit by Earl Thomas and his face mask unscrewed, so dragged off the field like the Great Gazoo. Then you have him getting beat with his own helmet by Myles Garrett, and then getting, like you mentioned, benched for Duck Hodges. So he's been through it here in Pittsburgh. Fans know that, and I think appreciate it. And so there is a surprising amount of support behind Mason Rudolph here in town that if Rodgers doesn't come in, or if Rodgers should struggle a lot early on, people are going to be asking for Rudolph.
I think about the reputation that Rodgers has in recent years. Coach killer, or a locker room disruptor, kind of a not really a chemistry guy, and I'm wondering how it all works because you've got an alpha in Mike Tomlin. You've got a guy who I consider to be one of the more arrogant coaches in the league in Arthur Smith. It's my way, and that's the way that it's going to be. And how does it all play if you have Rodgers as part of that stew offensively with the Steelers?
Well, the one thing I will give Mike Tomlin credit for is he has known how to handle those type of personalities.
Sure.
The people that are sort of, hey, I'm one, and then there's these other 52 guys on the roster. He did it with Roethlisberger for a time. He did it with Antonio Brown, and pretty well with Antonio Brown. I mean, we saw how he went off the rails once he left Pittsburgh. So he should be able to handle Rodgers, no problem. And I think Arthur Smith is going to have to resign himself to the fact that when and if, probably more likely when Rodgers comes in, he's going to have to marry a lot of his concepts to the stuff that Rodgers likes to do. Does that mean less play action? Does that mean not running the ball quite as much? I don't know how that meeting with Rodgers went back in late March, early April when he snuck in and out of town over the course of a few hours. But I imagine it had to go fairly well, at least from Rodgers' side of the table, in that he's still interested in coming here and most likely going to be here at some point this summer. For Arthur Smith, you're right. It may be tough, but I think there would be a look back on Smith's offense last year, and Mike Tomlin would probably sit Arthur down if he hasn't already and say, hey, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I'm a run-first guy, too. I want to win with defense also, but if we've got a future Hall of Fame quarterback at our disposal and he shows us even flashes of what he had in his prime, we're going to have to lean on that guy. And I think that's the most important part of Arthur and Mike and Aaron all coming together, is that they need to understand, all of them, everybody involved, that Aaron's not prime MVP Aaron Rodgers anymore, right? He is much more like late-stage Ben Roethlisberger, where you get the occasional lightning bolt shot out of his rear end and it steals you a game late. And if they get that out of him, it's probably enough to take them from 9-8 to 10-7. Maybe they sneak an extra win in there and end up 11-6. Either way, we're probably talking about a wild card or wild card adjacent team if they go about it the way they've gone about it the last couple of years, which is, hey, take what we can get out of the quarterback, let our defense win us a couple of games, and go from there. Anything can happen once we get in, as Mike Tomlin calls it, the tournament.
Oh, Chris, I mean, the networks would love that if the Steelers got in as a 6 or a 7. And, hey, everybody, tune in here for this wild card round. It's Rodgers against Jackson or Allen or whoever it may be. Yeah. It was kind of a joke last year with the Jets that, hey, let's bring in all my guys here. Your Devontae Adams, your Allen Lazard. Mm-hmm. But should that be also kind of expected? Are the Steelers ready to bring in some different people? And maybe this story is kind of married to that, but I'm reading here that there's a deal perhaps in place for Jonnu Smith. Your thoughts on what could happen with the rest of the personnel here on the Steelers offense?
Yeah, I don't think there's any of those Aaron Rodgers adjacent guys floating around out there. There were some rumors about, well, what would they have to do to maybe get Romeo Doubs, right? Because they're basically, after the Pickens trade, down to Metcalf and a bunch of dudes. Calvin Austin has been decent in his first couple of years in the league, but he's a smaller guy. Roman Wilson, who they drafted out of Michigan last year, has a ton of potential, but was hurt most of last year and couldn't get on the field once he did get healthy. We'll see how those guys fold in, but they don't have a true wide receiver 2 on this roster. There's the possibility, right, that they could go out and get a Cooper or, another one of those veteran wide receivers that's still out there and has yet to sign a deal somewhere. And there's a good chance that happens before training camp and that they're not necessarily Aaron Rodgers kind of guys, that they're not the Lazards or Dobbs of the world. I do think the Jonnu Smith thing might be a little bit of an agent play. It's no coincidence that Adam Schefter was, I think, the one to break the original report. I think Adam has a pretty good relationship with Jonnu's agent, Drew Rosenhaus. One of those things where Jonnu Smith, I even saw it reported, has been publicly saying he'd prefer to stay in Miami. I think this is just a coy little play to maybe put some leverage on the Dolphins and say, hey, get me a deal or else, then I'll definitely want out. I just don't see the room for Jonnu Smith in this offense. You've got Pat Freiermuth, who is the second highest paid guy on the offense, behind only Metcalf. You've got a young tight end out of Georgia a couple years ago in Darnell Washington, who they haven't really utilized to his full potential yet. They've got the tight ends on the roster. I know Arthur Smith would put 13 of them on the field at once if he could, but I don't think adding Jonnu Smith to the mix is the answer. I think that's probably more just of a leverage play by Smith and his agent.
And Chris Mack, you can hear him this weekend on the BetMGM Network. Cavalli and Mack, the podcast to check out on YouTube. And our favorite Ians are joining us in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia. Chris, I love George Pickens' talent, but I didn't love his game. In a word, describe his tenure in Pittsburgh.
Oh, boy. In a word, I guess tumultuous would be the word.
Okay.
If I could be more elaborative and descriptive, didn't reach his full potential, right? Just never really did. He has potential to be a true wide receiver 1 in an offense that can cater to him and get him the number of targets that make him feel like he's being used to his full potential. Immaturity than tumultuous. He's just still immature. I don't know if the trade to Dallas will help lessen that immaturity, help him grow up a little bit. I got to imagine that's a tough place to find more maturity in that locker room with that owner and that system. But he's not going to get more targets in Dallas. CeeDee Lamb's still going to be the guy there. I know they're talking. I saw CD and Georgia something a couple weeks ago where CD insisted, no, there's no 1 and 2 here. It's 1 and 1. Well, look, if Dak decides that one guy is more open than the other, and one guy gets 13 targets and catches 2 touchdowns on a given day, and the other guy gets 4 targets and 2 catches for 10 yards, you know what we're going to see from George Pickens on the sideline. There might be a helmet getting spiked. He might take a dumb personal foul in a bad spot at the end of a game. That's just his maturity level right now. So if we're talking about George Pickens in Pittsburgh, in a word, it's immaturity.
All right, a fantasy type of question here because you had a running back that was very productive, and now he's with the Chargers. So kind of taking over here is Jaylen Warren, or is Caleb Johnson going to go take carries away? How does that whole running back situation look for the Steelers here?
Well, Mike Tomlin, I wouldn't say is loath to put rookies in a start right out of the gate, but he wants to make guys work for it. So I'm sure you're going to see Jaylen Warren continue to get running back 1 reps and carries through camp and the preseason, and maybe even through the month of September. He is, I think, better as a complement. We'll see how that goes. I think eventually Caleb Johnson gets more and more and more carries to where, we're halfway through the season talking about a 50-50 split, which, to be honest, it was at times with Najee as well. Najee and Jaylen Warren had the same number of touches some weeks. So, I do like the fact that Caleb Johnson has a little bit more of that home run potential than Najee had, in that when he hits the second level, he's got that burst, he's got that extra gear. He hits the nitrous button like Fast and the Furious, and he can take off. Najee never really had that ability. If he did, he didn't show it here. So you've got a little bit more home run potential with Caleb Johnson. He's built very similarly to Najee, not quite as thick, but I think he and Warren are going to work well as complements to each other early on. And I think probably by the end of this season, you're going to see Caleb Johnson sort of move into what Tomlin would call pole position, getting the bulk of the carries if he lives up to his potential.
Chris, while we have you, I wanted to ask you some questions about other Pittsburgh sports as well, because you've certainly got a very intriguing and interesting player in Paul Skeens with the Pirates. The Pirates are the Pirates, but Skeens is electric. And I said last year, in his rookie year, what are they waiting for? They should just trade him now because they're never going to pay him, and you'll never get more than what you're going to get for Paul Skeens now. And to hear guys like Jeff Passan of ESPN kind of make that suggestion and have a lot of people shoot it down immediately, I mean, I see what's going on here, and we're just looking at where this is all headed with Skeens. Are the Pirates going to be able to afford Paul Skeens when it's all said and done? Because, man, that team needs somebody like that to kind of galvanize a fan base and make people believe that they actually do want to contend.
Yeah, being able to afford and being willing to pay are 2 very different questions here in Pittsburgh with the Pirates. Any MLB team should be able to afford a top-of-the-line starting pitcher to anchor their rotation for the next who knows how many years, take them to the playoffs, win them some games in the postseason if they're willing to pay him. And we know the story here in Pittsburgh is they're never willing to pay that guy. So, yes, there is a contingent of Pirates fans who say, like you did, man, he's going to be gone. He's going to be a Yankee or a Dodger in 4 years anyway. Just get it done now and get a bunch of prospects. But then I think there are a lot of people like myself who say, no, I'm tired of trading guys when they've got still a year or 2 left before free agency. At the very least, ride this out. And Paul Skeens has been vocal, to his credit. I don't know if his agent would agree with this, but he has been very vocal about saying, I want to win here. I want to turn it around. Will they back him by building a proper roster around him? They didn't do it this offseason. Their biggest move was trading for Spencer Horwitz, who was hurt for the first month and a half of the season and isn't a big bat anyway. They've got to decide if they want to trade. They've got a boatload of young, talented arms who they've accumulated over the last couple of years in the draft in the high minors. If they're willing to part with some of those guys, Andrew Solometo, Anthony Solometo, Braxton Ashcraft, there's a whole bunch of guys who they could deal and they could get some offensive pieces back, but they've got to stop doing this runaround where it's trading stars or potential stars. You look back at the Garrett Cole trade years ago, they got Joe Musgrove from the Padres, and he was great while he was here, but he wasn't a top-flight starting pitcher. He fulfilled more of his potential in San Diego since he's gone there. And in that deal, they got David Bednar and Endy Rodriguez. Endy Rodriguez is catcher, first baseman. David Bednar is kind of a closer and doesn't really hold on to a lead. So you turned Garrett Cole into a former all-star closer and a quad A catcher, first baseman. They got to stop doing that because the fans here are at the point where they show up in direct correlation, guys, to how much money is spent on the Major League roster. And I wish someone in the Pirates front office would look at a simple graph of, we spend $100 million on payroll. We'll probably make $100 million at the gate and on concessions this year. In years where we only spend 60, we probably only make 60. They would go all in on spending $100, $110, $120 million on a roster, putting some legitimate bats around the pitching that they've accumulated, then they would have a chance. Mitch Keller, who's their number 2 starter and the longest tenured Pirate, could be that arm, even though he's not young, to maybe get them a bat or two. Part of the problem is they've got to do it via trades because I don't think many free agents are interested in coming to Pittsburgh. Beautiful ballpark and a city that gets behind its team when it's winning, but also a place where you know it's going to be tough to win simply because of the way the owner handles the finances. So, like an Anthony been a great target this offseason, but they were never going to pay him enough. And when you're not willing to go out and pay decent money in free agency to help supplement drafted and developed over the years, you're just not going to get very far.
Yeah, a follow-up to that, and the example here maybe I would give would be the Orioles, because the Orioles for many years kind of down and out, and they had some young talent. Hey, here's a new owner, and look, maybe this year is not the best example, but they got to the postseason. That was exciting last year. Tell us about Bob Nutting. Who is this guy? Is he an absentee owner? What's the reaction from the fan base? I would think from the outside, your best hope would be, please sell the team here and get somebody else in.
Yeah, if you took a poll of the least popular people in Pittsburgh, he would be near the top, if not at the very top of the list. He's not absentee, but, he is around some. But when he's around, he gets jeered by the fans and heckled. He made the mistake of taking a walk through the left field rotunda on opening day and heard it from the fans. People do not. He consistently, since he took over control of the operation, nearly 20 years ago now, has nickel and dime thing. And so fans do not like Bob Nutting, the owner. If there were a way to force him to sell, they would be all for it. Unfortunately, from what I've heard, Bob Nutting is all in on continuing to own this team because he makes a profit, passing it down to his daughter at one point who will take control. And the Nutting family comes from a family that has made their money over the years owning little small local rural newspapers all over Ohio and Pennsylvania and Maryland, doesn't put a ton of money into them, and just makes what they can. Turn just a little bit of profit, and we're happy. And that's unfortunately the same way they treat their baseball team.
Chris, quickly before we let you go, the next coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins will be?
Oh, I wish I could tell you that, guys. They've been so tight-lipped over there. There's very little coming out. And so I was a big fan of bringing Rick Tocchet back to Pittsburgh, but clearly we're going to have to root against our guy now that he's out in Philly.
Yep.
It does feel like they're going to go with a younger name, and Dubas is going to really, truly, finally make this his operation. I think there was always a little bit of difficulty for him in getting Mike Sullivan to work within the constraints they had to work within. So I won't give a specific name, but I'll say it is going to be one of these younger guys who hasn't had a shot to be a head coach yet, and works closely with Dubas in understanding that this roster needs to be overhauled as quickly as possible to capitalize on maybe one more good run with Sidney Crosby if they can, but that they've also got to transition and turn over that roster and get those young guys the ice time necessary in those big moments so that when they do show up in the playoffs again, they're not wide-eyed and caught like deer in headlights not knowing what to do. Sid will do everything he can to bring these young guys along on the ice, but the coach has to be all on board with Kyle Dubas in also doing that. Sully had a real tough time getting on board with that, especially when those young kids would go out and make the mistakes that we know young players are prone to making. I think we'll probably see another down year here in Pittsburgh, to be honest, under the new head coach. And if they don't get into the playoffs in that new coach's second year, then you're really going to see the heat turned up on Kyle Dubas' seat.
Well, if you want more Pittsburgh sports, may we suggest Chris Mack. Chris, tell everybody a little bit about Cavalli and Mack, that pod, and when we can catch you here on the BetMGM network.
Yeah, on the BetMGM network, filling in a whole lot this summer when people take their vacations. And then obviously BetQLU, we will fire back up once the college football season gets started on weekends later this late summer and early fall. And Cavalli and Mack on YouTube. We stream live on Twitter several times a week. Just search Cavalli and Mack. Like I said, Mark's been around this team for over 2 decades. He's been the president of the Pittsburgh Pro Football Writers Association before, so he's as plugged into the team as anybody, and he's also a goofball. If you've ever seen any of his appearances on the McAfee show, you know that. I just try to get him to show up and stay in line and stay on task and talk about the Steelers rather than talking about the sushi he had the night before. But we have fun, and if people want to check it out, Molly and Mac on YouTube.
Chris, appreciate the time as always, bud. Enjoy your weekend. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
There's Chris Mack. That's our favorite Yinzer. God, every time we have him in here, it's like just knowledge, and more knowledge, just inside information. And a lot of it, things that you're not surprised to hear, like, oh, Pirate fans don't like that owner. Yeah, that guy, the way he operates, if he's operating the team the way he operates his business, then that's his prerogative, but it's not going to field a winning franchise.
Well, if you're a Pirate fan, a Red fan, whatever, you're like, we can't compete. Are you willing to sacrifice major time in order to unwind here? Meaning a new CBA and making sure there's some sort of salary cap. More importantly, a salary floor, because there is no pressure for this Jamo down in Pittsburgh, this owner, ever to put anything else out there. To me, I would think to make more money, invest more in the product. That would be a simple way if I was running the team. Doesn't seem to have that philosophy. And then when you hear, he runs a chain of small-town newspapers, okay, yeah, nickel and dime guy.
Checks out.
Yeah.
A couple of names to keep in mind here as the Penguins narrow down their coaching search. Washington Capitals assistant coach Mitch Love and former Sens head coach, hey, Dan DeLorean, DJ Smith have emerged as 2 leading candidates for the Penguins. So Love was once the AHL Coach of the Year, his 2 years in the league, 21-22, 22-23. I want to say that was with Hershey. And Smith was let go by the Sens and hired with the Kings the day he was let go by the Senators in the head coaching role in Ottawa, hired by the Kings, where he spent the last season and a half as an assistant or associate coach. So a couple names to keep in mind there. The Sabres made a move today.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We have time for your calls. It's happy hour. It's Friday. Sun's out. It feels great, doesn't it? 866-4FAN, 866-4326.
More next on The Fan, Rochester.
You're listening to The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Your fridge has better game day snacks than you have sports knowledge. It's time for an upgrade. Tell your smart speaker to play 95.7 The Fan and let your appliances know who's the real MVP.
WROC-AM, WBEE HD2 Rochester, and streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Buffalo Sabres have a new senior advisor, Jarmo Kekalainen. Kekalainen, the former GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yankees and Dodgers highlighting your baseball weekend. It's going to be a late start tonight. It'll also be the Sunday night game on ESPN. Mets hosting the Rockies tonight. The Red Sox are in Atlanta. One final from the majors today. The Reds over the Cubs at Wrigley 6-2. Currently, the White Sox and Orioles are scoreless. They're in the second. The Rochester Red Wings looking to make it 5 in a row tonight as Columbus once again the opponent. Game 6 of Knicks and Pacers tomorrow night. New York forcing a Game 6. Game 7, if necessary, would be on Monday. Sports brought to you by GetMyPerks.com. Get 2 buckets for the price of 1 to Big Oak Golf Shop and Driving Range. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Today's Friday.
Today is Friday.
I don't know if you guys know this. We are officially in best shape of their life season right now.
Mike Danger.
Your Honor, I'm a freak bitch. Handcuffs, leashes, switch my wig, make him feel like he's cheating. Put him on his knees, give him something to believe in. Never lost a fight, but I'm looking for a beating.
Gene Battaglia.
Oh, TMZ Rochester, the sports bar.
There you go.
Yeah, and we got more coming up.
And the New York Knicks have looked elimination in the eye, and they are alive and kicking.
The Edmonton Oilers pour onto the ice. They are the Western Conference champions for the second year in a row. It's Edmonton and Florida in the Stanley Cup final.
I think a rematch is really good for hockey.
The Sabres hired the senior advisor, Jarmo Kekalainen.
There isn't a single dating website out there made for me and you.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Tune in Monday when I dive into the lyrical content of Megan Thee Stallion in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Happy hour! The weekend right in front of us. A great weekend of sports ahead. We're glad you're with us. Thanks for making this part of your routine and listening at 95.7 FM, AM 950. The Fan Rochester sounds its best in the free-to-download Odyssey app. You can also watch the Sports Bar, our YouTube channel, and our Twitch stream every afternoon from 3 until 6 at The Fan Rochester.
I just kind of did a quick search here about are there any updates on Cardi B and Diggs to review the story. Diggs on a boat. What's that bag he's holding? Ooh, the Patriots aren't happy about this. Cardi B really not happy about this. Now it's just getting silly. One of these gossip sites, Stephon Diggs could be cut by the Patriots. No, okay. Now we're just talking silly.
Get out of here.
No.
Get out of here. And if you missed it, we did. We reached our quota. We did discuss a new element of the Jordan Hudson, Bill Belichick saga. And you know what? Now that I think about it, the more I think about it, I think that that's a big power move. I mean, I would do the same for my daughter. I would go to people and be like, hey, you should hire my daughter. And by the way, pay her 6 figures. And essentially, that's what we're talking about here. I mean, that's his girlfriend, but could be his daughter. Could be his granddaughter.
It could be his glad you clarified
Yeah.
that. So the story is that Bill Belichick, earlier this year when he was doing the media thing, and we forget about that. He was with Omaha Productions, and he had the show on CW Network inside the NFL. He was going around to everybody that he was doing these shows for saying, hey, Jordan, she's great. Please hire her. If you had 6 figures, then that would be like, this is the latest Pablo Torre report. That
I mean, if you're Belichick, though, that's actually cheaper than her being around and siphoning off all of his wealth and dumping it into real estate. It would be cheaper for her to go and, earn 6 figures in a career in marketing or publishing or whatever.
Listen, when you get home tonight and you want to connect with your lady, right? And the executive producer loves true crime.
Yeah.
And you can certainly, shameless plug, find a lot of true crime in the Odyssey app.
Uh-huh.
we can't call it crime, but this is true life, what's happening. And what makes the True Crime Story podcast always interesting, they lead you along the way. They lead you to say, conclusions, and you're the detective. Well, we're all detectives in this story here.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing with Belichick and Hudson. Like, wait, what is this really about?
Develop a deeper bond with your significant other when you bring up the drama that happens around the world of sports. Because let's face it, they probably like the Kardashians, and they like watching, give me the latest on what's happening with P. Diddy and going to Perez Hilton and getting all the gossip and all the details. Hey, in the world of sports, there's no shortage. You've got a lot of salacious gossip in the world of sports, this being the latest. But, I mean, you can go back to Delonte West and LeBron's mom. You could go back to...
That was his name.
Yeah, you could go back to Aaron Hernandez with the Patriots. I mean, there's a lot of gossip. There's a lot of juicy gossip that if your significant other is into that, chances are they are, you develop a closer bond around the world of sports by sharing some of these unbelievable stories.
Probably the biggest scandal, but it's not fun to talk about, was what happened at Penn State. The head coach covering up. Oh, my God, the president covering this up?
Yeah.
People went to jail.
Yeah. My wife, if I bring up some of this stuff, my wife will just hate sports even more. So, I have to be selective with which ones I want to share.
It's not exclusive to sports. It's every field. I'm sure if we dove into, what's the biggest scandal in entertainment, here's Roman Pulaski. Let me tell you about this guy. Oh, my gosh. You know how the Me Too movement started? I mean, danger. It's not a sports thing.
No, definitely not. So there you go. There's your latest on Belichick and Jordan Hudson to the Sabres, where today we learned of the hiring of a new senior advisor. His name is Jarmo Kekalainen. If that name sounds familiar to you and you're a hockey fan, it's because his resume is significant. He has a stint with the Columbus Blue Jackets, 5 playoff appearances in his first 7 seasons as the GM in Columbus.
Wait, you can make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference?
I know, and not be from Florida. Yes,
yeah, wow.
It does happen. Even in a state with taxes and no palm trees, you can still make the postseason.
Wow.
Shocking, I know. He also led them to a franchise record 108-point season in 2016-2017. He worked in Ottawa. He worked in St. Louis in the front offices there. So he's got a pretty hefty resume. And on a Friday afternoon at the end of May, we learned that he has been added to the Buffalo Sabres front office as now a senior advisor to GM Kevin Adams.
Yeah, senior advisor. Does that mean consultant? Does that mean everything has to run by his desk? I want to know more about the dynamic here. And the Sabres put this out, and then Pete Guelli, who I follow on social media, touting this, and this is his hire.
It's a hire on his watch.
Kevin Adams is not his hire. Kevin Adams was like, okay, we can't do it Botterill. Hey, he's here. He's good with the numbers. Why don't we bring him in? Even though, we play in the league. It can't be that hard to be a GM.
I think to the point that Joe Yerdon made earlier, it's like, or Paul Hamilton, would have been nice if you did this originally. 5 years you had to wait and suffer watching a guy flounder who had no experience in the role that he was in. You might have belief, or he might be the guy that's saying, yes, Terry, that's exactly what I will do. But now you're bringing in somebody who actually has a little bit of weight. And whereas I thought the Eric Stahl hiring did nothing for me, this does mean something. And it wouldn't be shocking that if going into next season, beginning of next season, if there's some sort of downward spiral like we saw last year, the 13-game losing streak, why are you even wasting your time?
Well, this is it. I mean, it's very simple. How many years does Lindy Ruff have on his contract?
1.
Okay, and Kevin Adams. If you are after Christmas, and we get to January, and we're still farting around, everybody's gone. Everybody's gone. You would just kind of clean house, and you would say, okay, Seth Appert, you're the interim coach, and I'm Jarmo Kekalainen, and now you have a runway for this guy. This guy, if it's not going well, he's in the organization. He can figure out who's who do I want to keep, who can we trade. I mean, it's the perfect world. So Kevin Adams, and by the way, Kevin Adams, if you don't like it, you've had 5 years. This is going to be year 6.
Yeah, I'm so curious as to what led to this. Like, which direction did this directive flow from? Did it come from the top down? Was it Terry and Pete Goelli saying, we've got to get this guy some support. We need to get, or are they saying not only do we need to get him support, we need to have a plan in place for when we blow this up? Or was it the other way around? Was it Kevin Adams saying,
you know the answer to that?
Well, it's probably a little bit of both.
No, Kevin Adams wouldn't want to hire his replacement.
He wants support. He needs help. He needs more people in his department, more people that he can bounce ideas off of, more ears and eyes on the actual product.
I would think that, starting back up a scouting department might be the first thing and everything else. I mean, like, this guy has an accomplished resume. Kevin Adams does not. I would think, okay, it's not totally 100 to it's not 50-50, but I think it leans a little bit more in the direction of Goelli and Pegula.
Okay. So that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if there's any other changes that are going to be made here with the Buffalo Sabres in the coming days and weeks as we get to the Combine next week, and then eventually here the draft. The offseason continues. We still have a little bit of hockey left to go, including the Stanley Cup Final, and we now know it will be a rematch of last year's final between the Edmonton Oilers, the Florida Panthers, and the Oilers holding home ice advantage.
If it gets to a Game 7, June 20th would be the Game 7. I mean, come on. And really, reality, it's probably because of television. It's probably that's what you need to do here. And you can't conflict against the NBA Finals. But if there was any year, maybe the hockey could pull a little bit closer. Connor McDavid is he a bigger star than SGA and Halliburton?
The thing I don't like about McDavid, because as a player, he's unbelievable. He's so fun to watch. He's ridiculous on the ice. But there isn't a lot of personality there. There isn't a lot of – you're not going to get a lot when you're interviewing Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl for that. He's just always upset.
Why are you so pissy?
But they don't give you a lot in terms of like, oh, I like that guy. I like him because he's a great player, but there's not a lot of – and I think most hockey players are kind of this way. They're just not great with the media. They're not that charismatic.
You and I sat down with Tage Thompson, and it's like, nice guy, did everything right, but the way these guys come up through the juniors and the way that they're kind of trained, it's just they are stripped of their personality.
They're robotic, man.
Yeah.
They're just robots. They're absolutely robotic. And so I think that's kind of working against the NHL in terms of how they market their stars. They've got stars. There's plenty of guys that are unbelievable at their craft. And I'm sure they have great personalities as well. We just don't see them because it's sacred. We don't want to. We don't follow what happens in the locker room all the time.
When PK Subban, I think he was one guy that had a personality when playing, and he was on that Nashville team anchoring the blue line, and he played for Montreal. And when he's taking crap from Mike Milbury, saying about dancing on the ice before, come on, the league needs something like that.
No doubt.
I mean, there's an opportunity if you ever had an outspoken Charles Barkley type in the NHL. People would gravitate to that. We're ready for that.
Yeah, well, I think the closest you have to it is the guy that's playing in Florida. And if you had Brad Marchand in Florida playing for another cup on your bingo card to start the season, let me know you've won the lottery. I have no idea how. That's the kind of guy that I think everybody in the NHL looks at him and says, I hate that guy. But he's also a guy that I think everybody would admit, I want that guy on my team.
He figured out at a young age, like, I'm not going to get here by scoring goals. He was never the leading scorer at any level. Think about that. Like in youth hockey, not the leading scorer, but just being a pest and excelling at that. And, yeah, like I say, I hate the guy, but I respect the guy if that's possible.
Right. And so what do we have with this final matchup between the Panthers and the Oilers? What's different? Well, the Oilers are coming in with a head of steam. Skinner's playing great hockey right now. And for what it's worth, the Panthers are playing really good hockey right now as well.
Edmonton has home ice.
And home ice for Edmonton. So that might mean something. The loss of Zach Hyman certainly didn't feel like it hurt Edmonton last night as they advanced, getting past the Dallas Stars, who've got a little bit of chilling to do here between their head coach and their star goaltender, Jake Ottinger, and Pete DeBoer, who Ottinger getting the hook early in that game, and really icy throughout the course of the game and after the game, certainly with some of DeBoer's comments. Worth paying attention to that here through the offseason and whether or not that comes back to haunt anybody starting next season.
Knicks. Let's talk about the Knicks.
I'm ready, man.
Yeah, let's
Knicks
do
in
it.
7. Knicks in 7, and you look, I don't care. If you're a basketball fan, you can't be excited about Indiana and OKC. I mean, sure, there's exciting players there. We love SGA. We like Halliburton's a killer, but let's face it, the Knicks are fun. The Knicks are interesting. If the Knicks aren't in the finals, are you really paying attention? Are you really watching the NBA finals?
The Knicks, we've said they've been lucky. Oh, Boston can't shoot that way in game 1. They can't shoot that way in game 2. First time Indiana didn't get the triple digits. Indiana shot only 40% from the floor last night, Danger. That was the worst this postseason. What did Halliburton end up with? 8 points? 8. Couldn't even get to 9. Now, you're going to Indiana. The thing with this postseason, it wasn't evident as much last night, and this is why I do believe the NFL playoffs are superior to everything, even the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Ooh, this is a new development. I've always believed that the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best postseason product.
It's the fact that it's one and done, and maybe my view is kind of skewed by the fact of, there's the Western Conference Final, and then you just see teams laid down, or it's not our night, we'll come back. Kind of felt that way a little bit for Indiana last night. Kind of felt like, okay, maybe this isn't it, but we're going to be back home for game 6. Don't play with fire like that. If the Knicks, you really think this would play out this way? If the Knicks find a way tomorrow night, you really think at MSG, that whole city, you really think Indiana would win game 7 in New York?
Well, to keep with our TMZ theme that we've been riding this week, I'll throw this stat out at you, Gino. The Knicks are 2-0 with Kylie Jenner courtside. When she's not at Madison Square Garden courtside with Timothée Chalamet, they're only 1-4. So Kylie
got to get to Indianapolis.
You know you're going to Indiana for Game 6 tomorrow, baby cakes. Even if you don't know where it is on a map, you and Timothy need to be there courtside. You're the good luck charm. You need to be there distracting those Indiana Pacers. We need Kylie Jenner courtside Game 6 in Indianapolis.
Wouldn't it be fun just to be a super fan? It's not exclusive to the Knicks. I remember Ashley Judd.
Kentucky.
She still follows Kentucky around. There she be, and they cut away to her, and there she is, in her blue and everything. Like it'd be so much fun to be like a super fan, have that wealth.
To have no responsibilities and unlimited wealth and just be able to go when you want to go.
I'm Ben Stiller. Hey, Severance, we're not shooting that for another 2 years. Come on, I'm going to follow this team around here.
It's been a lot of fun to watch, and we'll see. We'll see if it continues. Game 6 from Indy tomorrow night, and we'll see if Kylie Jenner's courtside. She's the good luck charm. We need her there. She provides a little bit of a distraction, I think, for Indiana. I don't think they can handle that. I don't think they can handle that kind of celebrity, that kind of distraction courtside with the Knicks on the court Game 6.
By the way, okay, now this is some play-by-play snobbery. And again, Mike Breen is a Fordham guy. I met him once.
He's elite.
He's elite, but I think the team of Harlan, Stan, and Reggie, superior. And then when they tossed it, I'm going to miss TNT, Danger.
Well, here's Breen deserves better. Van Gundy, Breen with Van Gundy and Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
That was the crew. That was the crew. I don't know if it got too expensive for ESPN or what happened, but that was the crew. That was a good game. Breen is elite. Doris, nah. And Jefferson. You're right. Kevin Harlan is a lot of fun. Kevin Harlan calls a fun game. I mean, he's just
he knows how to set up the other two guys too. That's what makes it fun.
He's just always so in the mode. He's just always in play-by-play mode. What was was it the Super Bowl?
Oh, there's a streaker on the field.
Where did we have that streaker? Was that?
It was in the Super Bowl.
It was, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I know I have. I know I've got it somewhere. It's so good, and it's just a reflection of
HARLA.
Yeah, when the guy is in play-by-play mode, he's in the zone. he can't turn it off.
5:03 to go. Someone has run on the field. Some guy with a bra. And now he's not being chased. He's running down the middle, the 40. Arms in the air in a victory salute. He's pulling down his pants. Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants. He's being chased to the 30. He breaks a tackle from a security guard. The 20, down the middle, the 10, the 5. He slides at the 1, and they converge on him at the goal line. Pull up your pants, take off the bra, and be a man. And the players with hands on hips at the other end of the field are looking at him and shaking their head and saying, why, oh why, is this taking place in a Super Bowl?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. That guy's great. From 2021, Kevin Harlan.
Kevin Harlan is the best.
Yeah. All right, we got to get to a round of shots next.
Yeah, we some more that we can dive into in terms of the Knicks and Pacers here. One of your favorites returning to the diamond tonight. I bet you didn't even know. Oh, he's just so off the map that he's been out for here for a while. And, yeah, very serious allegation against an NBA star. We'll touch on that story.
All right, we'll get to that and more next. A round of shots. So don't forget about last call. You can have the final word in the sports bar. Join us at 585-866-4FAN, 866-4326.
You're listening to the Sports Bar.
ultimate sports haven. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester. Turn your groggy mornings into a sports spectacle with Maggie and Perloff on 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester, weekday mornings. Then let the sports banter make your alarm clock look like a bad idea. The Fan, Rochester, sports update.
Buffalo Sabres have a new senior advisor, Jarmo Kekalainen. Marty Baron giving his resume.
12 years as a general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before that, he was with the St. Louis Blues for 8 years as a scout and an assistant general manager, and then 7 years with the Ottawa Senators. So he's been in hockey ops for 30 years, and before that, he was a player.
Yankees-Dodgers highlighting your baseball weekend. Tonight's going to be a late start on the West Coast. It'll be the Sunday night game of the week. Mets hosting the Rockies. The Red Sox are in Atlanta. One final from baseball today. Reds over the Cubs by 6-2 score. They are scoreless in the fifth, a game that was moved up because of weather tonight in Baltimore. White Sox and Orioles, no score. Red Wings tonight look to make it 5 in a row. Columbus once again the opponent. Gene Battaglia in the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
The only way to take The Fan Rochester with you is the free Odyssey app. Download it today and follow the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
All right, let's pick up around here. We got the weekend in front of us. You're in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia, and it's time for a round of shots.
Yeah, we're high-stepping in the weekend. Danger. No slowing down here. More on the Sabres' new senior advisor, Jarmo Kekalainen. As you heard the quote from Marty Baron, long time with the Columbus Blue Jackets, 5 times making the playoffs, and was the most successful period in their franchise history. Previously working for Ottawa as a European scout and as a director of player personnel. In St. Louis as their director of amateur scouting and an assistant GM. He's a native of Finland, played 55 games in the NHL with Boston and Ottawa.
This is WGR's Paul Hamilton on the move.
He's done, a bunch of different things in the NHL, including being a general manager, which is key. He was the GM for the Columbus Blue Jackets from 2013 to 2024. But before that, he was director of player personnel with the Senators. He was assistant GM and director of amateur scouting with the Blues. Then he went back over to Finland to be the GM at Jokerit. He's had different experiences in hockey departments. And so I think that's going to be key for him to be a helpful part of the department, and he'll be an advisor to Adams in all areas of the hockey department. I don't think there's anything they wouldn't ask him to talk about or do or anything like that. So it's something that I think has been badly needed. It's unfortunate that Terry Pegula didn't see this when he hired Adams. He hired a guy who had never been a GM before. Okay, fine. This would have been a perfect hire back. Well, he was the GM of the Blue Jackets by then, but a guy like this would have been a perfect hire back then to give him a sounding board and to give him guidance as he, tried to maneuver through being a GM for the first time. So, they're doing it now, 5 years later, but, I think it's something that would have been great to do earlier in his tenure.
Oh, no, better late than never, I suppose. It's crazy. There's Paul Hamilton earlier on WGR.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of in agreement that if this goes again sideways, he's your next GM.
Oh, I think you can't help but see his resume and say, well, why didn't you just fire Kevin Adams and hire this guy? But that would be a little disgraceful, I think, to Kevin Adams at this point. And I
think it's the cachet Lindy Ruff has too.
Sure, you could see. I could certainly see Kevin Adams landing in a soft role somewhere in the organization with a guy like Kekalainen eventually being the GM, especially if things get off to a slow start in 2025.
It is a Stanley Cup final rematch. There is one thing that's going to be different this time around. It's the home ice. Edmonton starting off hosting game 1 and 2 this coming Wednesday and Friday as the series shifts to Florida, game 3 on the 9th of June. Should this go a full 7, Danger, that would be 21 days from today. Game 7 would be in Edmonton on Friday, June 20th, where will you be? Spain at that point?
Well, let's talk about what's important. Will Oilers girl be at game 1?
But I just wanted to say, you could be the most perfect, godly person in the world. You could save kittens from a river if they were drowning. Someone's still going to hate you. So you know what? At the end of the day, I got drunk and whipped my out at an Oilers game and they went viral. You if you don't like it. Woo! Go Oilers!
Right.
Oilers in 4. Let's go.
She should be out there on the center ice. Everybody,
That's who you need to bring in as a
Yeah.
senior assistant. That's who your new senior advisor should be in Buffalo. That's leadership right there.
My gosh, how did that not win Take of the Year?
We had some stiff competition, and by stiff competition,
Mike Trout returns from the injured list tonight. Danger. The
not
Angels
a winner.
Playing in Cleveland, the 33-year-old outfielder had hurt a surgically repaired leg while trying to beat out an infield hit back on April the 30th. After looking like a future Hall of Famer last decade, Trout only has played in 44% of the Angel games from 21 up until this point. This season saw him get off to a slow start, batting just 179.
I mean, I feel bad because the injuries are just crippling this guy. And there's no way he's going to be anywhere near what we remember him to be at this stage of his career, battling all these injuries. But I can't let go of the idea that this guy hasn't won anything. He's fantastic, but he's not a winner.
Well, compare him. I can't even think of Shohei as an Angel now. It wasn't that long ago. This is only year 2. Shohei hasn't pitched as a Dodger. Shohei was smart, like, no, get me out of here.
Right.
That's the team I want to. I love Southern California. I'm a Dodger. Mike Trout had that opportunity. Mike Trout decided, look, let me just kind of take the money. There's really, what scrutiny is there in Orange County, California?
Right. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier with the Florida NHL teams. You know, part of what I think makes Tampa and Florida appealing for players, besides the fact that they're in Florida, besides the financial benefits, lack of fan scrutiny. Like, there's nobody in Southern California saying Mike Trout is not a winner. We're being more critical of him here from across the country, and he's a fantastic player. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm saying he hasn't won anything.
Well, I mean, my gosh. Like, this was in 2019, right? Mike Trout could have had an opportunity to move along. We were talking about TMZ and true crime and everything. You had a scandal in baseball where legitimately the head of PR was providing illegal drugs to players, and Tyler Skaggs, a pitcher, overdosed.
Yep.
Overdosed.
Yep.
27 years old, dead. I would have been like, okay, I'm out of here. Maybe that's a sign. Get me out of here.
Right. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't know how the mind works, but I'm sure he sleeps well on a pile of money every night. I hope he's feeling better. It'll be good to see him back on the diamond, I suppose.
Do we get that Hoosier hospitality tomorrow? I feel like I should say that in the Southern voice. Hoosier hospitality. Game 6 tomorrow. John Mellencamp, overrated, took to social to call. Come on, Danger. Pink Houses, the most overplayed song in history.
I know he's a jerk. That I know.
That's true.
I've heard that from multiple sources that John Mellencamp is a jerk. He's not an easy guy to deal with. But, yeah, the Hoosier hospitality tweet that he sent out earlier this week and being upset of how Pat McAfee responded to the celebrities from New York that were in attendance, that's soft, man. That was soft.
Yeah, so McAfee today responding on his show telling Mellencamp to shut the F up.
I love it. And you know what? I know there are Knicks fans who were very upset by McAfee saying what he said. Good. That's the way it should be. What else do they have? Are you kidding me? When you walk into Madison Square Garden, it's hell.
Wait a second. There was some poor fool. Okay, Knicks beat Boston, everybody, and this guy's wearing an Indiana jersey walking the streets of Manhattan.
They tried to set him on fire.
They put trash on him.
They tried to set him on fire so much so that Halliburton had to give him tickets to go to a game for free because they felt bad for him. That's New York. So, yeah, whatever advantage you get, there's home court advantage in Indianapolis, but it's not imposing. It's not intimidating. Everybody that's from New York looks at Indiana as a joke, like cornfields. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we got to go in there. You guys are done for. So I like what McAfee did. Mellencamp, get out of here with your soft Hoosier hospitality crap. No, call him out. Call out Chalamet. Call out Chalamet? Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah, Chalamet.
Call out, Ben Stiller. Call out Spike Lee. Go ahead. But
So,
you need to have You got to have her in attendance. You got to have Kylie Jenner in attendance.
2-0.
She's the good luck charm. She's got to be there. She's a distraction. I can't remember who's the guy for Indiana that hit the three and like went by PJ. Went by, like, looked at her and like flashed her a sign.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, she's in their head. They're performing for her in front of her man. She needs to be there. That needs to happen. Good luck charm, Kylie Jenner.
All right, where do you come down on Bill Simmons? Is he respected NBA observer and voice or Boston homer?
Huh. Can I say both?
Well, here's his take. Simmons is suggesting that in Game 6, watch the officials, see how this game will be called, that the NBA wants the Knicks in the NBA Finals. Quote, if you've noticed from ratings and interest, it's a little more interesting nationally when there's a New York team in the finals.
I love this. Nobody is saying anything about. Has anybody said anything about officiating in this series?
No.
It hasn't been an issue.
No, because part of it is like, okay, we're going to look at the camera, video, blah, blah, blah.
But Simmons out of nowhere, off the top rope.
Off the top row saying, watch this.
Yeah, the officials are going to cost the Pacers Game 6. And now I want it to happen. Now I want a controversy. I want Carlisle fuming after Game 6 over the officiating.
It's kind of creepy that he's inserted himself into the storyline here, right?
Simmons?
Simmons, yeah.
I mean, he's a trusted NBA voice.
Okay, he's not biased whatsoever.
No, he's absolutely biased, but you can't say Stephen A. Smith isn't. I mean, like, this is the world that we live in now. I mean,
I think Stephen A's more shtick than anything.
But I mean,
and then Simmons,
if you're a credible journalist, do you love anything that Stephen A. Smith stands for? I mean, you hate everything about this guy because you're right. A lot of it is shtick, and part of that shtick is I'm a Knicks fan, and the sky is going to be orange and blue tonight. But I mean, if you're a credible journalist, you see that and you're like, ugh. I think Simmons is. I don't have a problem with Simmons, and yes, of course he's biased, but there are worse people, I think, that I could get NBA takes from. I love that take.
Well, if David Stern was alive, what would he be doing right now with Bill Simmons even mere suggesting that the officiating is going to be fixed here?
That's right. He'd have a
gosh.
talking to.
Well, that's like, okay, man, that's the difference between Silver and Stern. I remember Stern going after Rome. It was great radio.
Oh, this
back
is
in
the
day.
wild, wild west, man. The NBA is run by the players, and they dictate terms. And, yeah, it's still very, very much the wild, wild west.
Well, we make the awkward transition here to something a little more serious. Check that, a lot more serious. These allegations coming against New Orleans Pelican forward Zion Williamson in a civil complaint. Williamson is being accused of sexual abuse and rape. The plaintiff, identified as Jane Doe, says Williams committed sexual, physical, emotional, and financial abuse against her during their relationship. Representation for Williamson has come out in a statement strongly denying this.
And this isn't Tony Busby, defending for the plaintiff. This is okay. So I didn't need another reason to not like Zion Williamson, but you've presented me with one. I don't like this guy at all. I don't like this guy at all. And when I was recently in New Orleans, and I kind of like took their temperature on it, some locals, I'm like, what do you think? What do you guys think of Zion? Hate him. Can't wait for him to leave. He needs to get out of here. Me first guy, not a team guy. We're not winning anything with him. He needs to go. Nobody, not one person said, freak, remarkable, loves the community, gives back. Nobody had anything positive to say about this. This guy needs to go. So you gave me another reason not like Zion. Zion being Zion.
You need to go down there during Mardi Gras. This was when Zion was like really purposely not returning from an injury, and he was overweight, and somebody did a Zion float. It's just like
big fat guy.
Yeah, this caricature eating crawfish. Or whatever, like that.
Yeah.
Like that told me like, oh, okay, you're not well liked.
No,
the SEC football and basketball for that matter raising fines for on-field
or court storming now to $500,000. The school can avoid or lessen this fine if it prevents contact between officials and players and staff.
What this is about really more than anything is fear of litigation, right? God forbid
Insurance.
one of your students gets trampled and there's a lawsuit and we have to cover their medical bills if they get trampled on or it's a stampede. I mean that's where we are, I suppose. It drives me nuts. I mean, is there any better feeling than storming the court, storming the field?
Danger won the college championship. Let me tell you a story. We went up to Worcester, Massachusetts. Fordham beat Holy Cross. Dagger 3 at the end, and we all ran on the court. Everybody from the Bronx was all just jumping around on the court, and I might have bumped into a Holy Cross player. I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
Fantastic. Great memory.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore.
No. I think I had high school memories of doing that. I didn't have a college team to really storm the court for, but I do remember doing it in high school, and man, that's a lot of fun. Too bad that that's not happening, and now schools are going to be the ones that are fined $500,000, $500,000.
Yeah.
Drop in the bucket, really. I say go for it.
Fordham hasn't been to the NCAA tournament since I was there, so seeing that I'm 34, I mean, maybe it's...
Well, you have that memory, though, Gene. You nobody can take that away from you.
Nope.
That's Shots in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Let's take a quick break and come back. We'll have last call, 866-4326, 866-4FAN, if you want to pull up a stool and join us.
You're listening
Top shelf sports talk. You're hanging out in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Fun afternoon in the sports bar, getting you ready for your sports weekend in the Flower City. If you missed Chris Mack from the BetMGM Network and Cavalli and Mack, the pod on YouTube, you can check that out wherever you get your podcasts. Also, a conversation earlier with Joe Yerdon of Bleacher Report, noted hockey, as the Buffalo Sabres have gone ahead and made a move, making a move in hiring a senior advisor.
This music. Already the end here.
I know.
All right, I'm going to test you real quick here. The difference between my generation and your generation. Hot Lips Houlihan died today, 87.
Hot Lips Houlihan from the show MASH.
Okay, you did know that.
Right.
Loretta Swift.
I know the show MASH, but I can only tell you Alan Alda, and I remember Hot Lips, and then who was the other guy? Klinger?
Klinger. Potter.
Don't remember. Potter was the nerd.
He was the old grouchy guy.
Who was the nerd? Radar
So
was
you know that Winchester.
All right. Nerd! I don't. I'm not proud right now. I never really got into that show, but I do remember moments of the characters.
We remember the ending. Yeah.
Oh, sorry to hear that. I don't like going to the weekend on that note, Gino. All right, let's get to JR Sport Brief next on the Fan Rochester. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again coming up Monday at 3 o'clock.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on 95.7 FM and